I woke up to the sound of water dripping right next to me. It was a slow drip, but loud enough that whenever a drop hit the puddle that formed under the seats, it echoed across the cart. Falling asleep in a subway is rarely a good idea, but in that moment I really didn't care. Not like I had anything valuable on me besides my phone, which I keep it in my jacket's inner pocket. Sitting on the plastic chair, my head tilted backwards, the light above me hit me right in the eyes, blinding me for a moment. When I regained my vision a few moments later, I realized that I was alone in the cart. Strange, I thought, it's rush hour. I didn't sleep that much, did I? Sure enough, when I checked the time, it was 6 p.m. and I boarded at around 5:50 p.m. I tried switching to Google Maps, thinking that perhaps I missed my stop, but it only showed me a blank map and a GPS signal not found message. Well, the internet still works at least, I said out loud, hearing my voice echoing. Besides the dripping water, there was complete silence. Not even the subway made any sort of noise. Looking outside the window revealed only pitch darkness. Eventually, I wanted to stand up, but the moment I tried, my legs just gave up on me. I fell, hitting my forehead to the chair in front of me. It hurt quite a bit, almost thinking I felt blood coming out. I stayed down for what felt like a few minutes, as I regained feelings in my legs, and the pain subsided. Standing up, I decided to go find someone else. Maybe they could tell me when the next stop is. The carts both to my left and to my right were also empty. Confused more than ever, I picked left as my direction, figuring that eventually I would have met someone. The subway had to stop at some point. I walked from empty cart to empty cart, rows of chairs unoccupied. Sometimes I thought I saw something from the corner of my eyes, but when I turned, it was the same emptiness. The lights flickered from time to time, but otherwise they were providing enough light for me to see ahead. When I looked at the time again, it was 8 p.m. Phone must have been bugged or something. No way I walked 2 hours in a bloody subway. When I stepped in the next cart, I heard a soft whistling. And then I saw someone else sitting. He must have been the one whistling. Looked like a homeless guy. His clothes were ragged, showing signs of being worn for quite a while. A scruffy beard was coming out of the gray hoodie he was wearing. Approaching him, the smell of sweat became almost unbearable, pit stains being clearly visible. Nevertheless, I needed to ask him. However, I noticed he wasn't whistling. "Excuse me," I asked politely. "Do you know where the next stop is?" He didn't budge. I thought he didn't hear me. "Excuse me," I said louder. The whistling was getting louder. "Sit the hell down," he whispered, "or you'll get us both killed." "Pardon, sit the hell down." Great, I thought. He was a junkie. Not wanting to anger him further and risk him going crazy on me, I sat down across him and looked closely, being careful for any sudden movements. The whistling became louder and louder, and I began to notice a shadow growing on the door to the next cart. I hoped that finally there was someone normal around here. When the door opened, I wanted to get up and greet them, but what I saw shocked me into staying down. A figure crouched under the doorway, putting a white-gloved hand on top of the doorway, unable to enter otherwise. A black head wearing a white hat peered out of the door. If I looked at its face, it felt like I was looking at darkness itself, engulfing the light around it like a black hole. Slowly getting through the doorway, whistling all the while, he managed to enter on the other side of the cart. Tall as the subway, and dressed in a completely white uniform, the thing was walking slowly towards us. "Don't look at it too long," the man in front of me whispered, "and don't make any sudden movements. Take out your ticket." Too scared to even say something, I began moving my hand towards my pocket and taking out my ticket. "Not that one," the man in front of me said quietly, "the other one." "But I don't have another ticket." The creature was getting closer. "Damn," the homeless man said. He scrambled in his pockets until he suddenly stopped. "Here, take this," and then he threw me a crumpled piece of paper. Unfolding it, the paper was just a plain white ticket with a black dot on it. The whistling stopped. The tall creature was right in front of me. "Tickets, please," it said in an echoing voice, sounding like several people were speaking at once. It then extended an abnormally long arm, opening its palm next to my chest. I put the ticket in its hand. "Thank you," the creature told me, taking the ticket and putting it in the pocket of its, proceeding to do the same thing with the man in front of me. "Have a nice trip," the many voices echoed, and then the whistling began. When that thing finally exited the cart, I nearly fainted. "Good job, kid," the man finally said out loud, with a voice That sounded like he ate cigarettes for breakfast. You got through your first meeting with the conductor, though you did cost me a ticket. What the hell was that thing? I yelled. Calm down, kid. The conductor is pretty harmless if you have your ticket. And don't act up. It's the other things you need to be careful of. What other things? Plenty of time to tell you about them. We'll be here a while. For now, let's make acquaintances. What's your name, kid? Anthony, and I'm not a kid, I said, being slightly annoyed. I'm 21, still a kid in my eyes, barely old enough to drink. Name's Matt. Matt, I want to know, when's this subway going to get to the next stop? He began to laugh. Kid, you're clearly new here. This subway doesn't stop. What do you mean by it doesn't stop? I mean what I said. It was some time ago since I boarded the subway. Can't really keep track of time here. I was going to work when I found myself here. Where do you work exactly? I asked, confused as to how someone looking like they haven't showered in years could work. The World Trade Center, right in the middle of the second tower. I felt like all of the blood in my face was disappearing. That can't be right, can it? I stood up and looked straight in his eyes. You're lying to me. The Twin Towers collapsed over 20 years ago. He just gave me a small, sad chuckle. So it's true then. Met another kid a while back who said the same thing. Hoped he was wrong. But if you say the same thing, it must be true. I had some good friends in there. You're still lying to me. How can you claim you work there and be dressed like that? The suit was nice, but it was impractical. Got these clothes from a body I found a few months after getting here. I fell right back in my chair. He said he found a body and just casually took its clothes. This had to be some sort of nightmare. I began slapping myself hard. Won't work, kid. Tried that one too. You'll just end up with sore cheeks. I was still in the subway. I stopped slapping myself as I slowly took in all that information. Hey, for now you're doing okay, kid. Come with me. I'll get you back to my people. Are there others? A few. We managed to set up camp in a few carts, around 20 minutes of walking from here. First, however, we need to get some water from the drip. The drip? You mean that cart with the dripping water? Yes, that one. It's the nearest source of water. The rest are at least a day of walking from our camp. Fine, but you better tell me what's really going on here. Sure, nothing better to do to kill the time. Got a notebook to write down? No, but I do have my phone. Kid, it's going to take ages to type down on those small buttons. Buttons, I said as I pulled out my phone. This phone doesn't have buttons. Matt looked at it like he never saw something quite like it before. What is that? My phone. I'm gonna write notes with this. I opened my notes app and began typing. Technology has advanced quite a bit since I got trapped here. When Matt told me that, I had a sudden realization. I could post these notes on the internet. Maybe we can find someone that knows more about our situation. Sure, internet, whatever. Matt was confused, but at that point, he didn't bother to ask more. Come, kid, let's go. And so I went with Matt to get water. Right now we're still walking, but I'm making this post to hopefully get some help. I'll update with new information when I have more time. It has been around 2 days since I ended up inside this subway, at least according to my phone. Never thought I'd end up missing Mr. Thompson's monotone lectures, but at this point, I'd rather sit in 100 of his classes in a row than to spend any more time inside this forsaken place. I wonder how Marie and the others are doing. The internet has provided me with no answers as to where the hell I am. Though to be completely honest, I was doubting that I can find anything about a seemingly endless subway, so for now, I'll just keep posting little updates on Reddit, hoping that I will get at least some form of news of the outside world. With that being said, I'm glad I found Matt. He has been a lifesaver so far, at least. In my case, on the way to what he called the drip, we couldn't talk much. The tall, pale figure of the conductor was still within hearing range, so we had to keep a slow pace behind it. I asked Matt why couldn't we just wait for it to be far from us, but he only said that we need to be quick and to shut up so he could hear. Normally, I would have retorted, but since he did admittedly save my life, I did as he said for now. Giving me a hand signal, Matt would indicate to me that he couldn't hear the whistle, meaning we could move in. Empty cart after empty cart, whistle after whistle, the occasional light flicker, moving as if we were thieves in the night. We made our way towards the drip. It felt like days have passed since I first met Matt, but my phone only showed it's been a few hours. We must have been close. Matt gave me the signal to move in, thinking the conductor has moved on. As we stood up to open the doors, both of us peered through the window. The conductor was there. The perfectly still creature was turned towards someone. It was a woman, didn't look a day over 20. Her long blonde hair barely hiding the terror on her face, mouth open as if to scream, but no sound coming out of it. Her hands were grasping the handles of the chairs next to her, frozen in place. Outstretching his abnormally long arm, the many voices of the conductor asked for the woman's ticket. As I kept staring at it, Matt forcefully shoved my head below the window. "We have to do something," I told him as quietly as I could. "It's too late for that girl. The conductor is already in there. Unless she has a ticket, she is gone." "What do you mean too late? Can't you just throw her a ticket like you did to me?" "Kid, you were sitting right in front of me. Not to mention it was far enough away in the cart to not notice small movements. Now, it is barely a few chairs in front of the door. Can't do anything. Please present your ticket for verification," echoed the conductor. "Do you have any more tickets? Maybe we could throw one without being noticed." "I always pack spares," he said sternly, "but if you open that door, that thing will notice us and will ask for our tickets, and right now, I only have 2 left. Maybe next time, you could pack some more. Don't you be a smartass with me, kid. 4 tickets are normally more than enough to get to the drip and back in one piece. Not my fault 2 entirely new people just happened to get here right when the conductor was coming through. I am not going to give you the tickets. Present the ticket," growled the conductor, "or you'll have to pay the fine." I frantically looked around, trying to do something, anything. That's when I noticed a piece of paper in the corner of the cart. A ticket. I quickly grabbed it, crumpled it, opened the door slightly, and threw the ticket in before closing the door just as fast, praying I didn't get noticed. The way Matt looked at me afterwards could have burned a mark on my soul, but I didn't care. I just wanted to save that woman. There was complete silence. Not a single sound could have been heard in the cart ahead, when suddenly the conductor started whistling. We waited until we couldn't hear it anymore, and entered the cart. I sincerely hoped that I saved that woman. When we entered, the cart was empty. All that was left inside was a puddle of black goo on the chair the woman was on, the ticket in front of the chair she sat on. That was reckless, stupid, and quite frankly just the most idiotic thing you could have done, yelled Matt. That woman was dead. Better than to just do nothing and have her die, I yelled back. Matt looked deep inside my eyes, rage fuming inside of him. A few seconds later, he managed to calm down, the anger being replaced with sadness. "Look," he said, his voice mellowing down, "I know why you did this. I truly do. It's just, there was no chance. You could have wasted my final tickets for the trip. And then, if it came back, we would have ended up like that." He then proceeded to point at the black puddle on the chair, slowly dripping down on the floor. He then bent over and picked up the ticket I threw at that woman. "To think," Matt said, a tinge of melancholy in his voice, "if she just had woken up a cart over, she might have lived. Sometimes, people are just unlucky." He then proceeded to put the ticket in his pocket. Right now, I understand why he thought that was the best thing to do, but back in that cart, witnessing someone just vanishing like that when I could have helped, all I felt was anger at him and myself. We continued to walk in silence until we finally managed to get to the drip, the cart I woke up in. Matt took out a small bottle of water out of his hoodie's pocket, placing it just where the water droplets were falling into the puddle. He sat down next to the bottle. "This is going to take a while, so make yourself comfortable." I sat down in front of Matt, trying not to cause a scene. "I can see you're still angry. Wouldn't you be? Maybe when I was younger. Right now, however, the best thing we can do is survive. Keep this in mind, kid. There is only one important rule in this place. Be careful. If you're being reckless, that would be the end of you and anyone you're with. If there's a chance to help someone, I'll take it." He just looked at me, saying nothing. I couldn't get a read on him, his face hidden under that beard and the cap he was wearing. We then sat in silence, waiting on the water droplets to fill the bottle. It was a slow process. However, little by little, the bottle was getting water. Looking up, I noticed that the water drip was coming from a pipe that ran across the cart, condensation forming and dripping down. As I was watching the bottle, Matt began to snore. He must have been really tired after everything that happened. I was too, and I would have liked to sleep a bit as well, but my mind didn't let me, being chock full of thoughts of my family, friends, that woman, and if I will ever get out of here. Suddenly, while my mind was racing, I began to smell something odd. Up until now, the subway had that familiar smell of old plastic, However, right now there was something different. I couldn't figure it out initially, my mind still focusing on what happened. Eventually, I finally got it. Salt. The air was salty. Confused, I thought of waking Matt up. Maybe he would have had some explanation. I gently shook him. What is it, kid? Smell the air. It smells kind of weird. He just looked at me and inhaled deeply. As soon as he processed the smell, I saw him becoming pale. His eyes were bulging, taking quick breaths. While staring at me, with his hands trembling, he grabbed the almost filled water bottle, raised percent from his chair, looking both to his right and left. Run, he yelled back, bolting for the door we came in from. I was shocked, trying to figure out what could have possibly scared that man so much after all we've been through in the last few hours. Looking in the opposite direction, the lights began to switch off row by row in the carts, turning everything to the same darkness as was outside. That was my cue to begin running. Matt was already several carts ahead, but as I was younger than him, I managed to catch up to him. The darkness was gaining of us, each cart behind going dark faster than the previous one. It wasn't long until entire carts were completely without light at once. We kept running, struggling to open the doors as fast as we could. However, his leg got caught in one of the doors, tripping him. The darkness was just a few carts away. I was halfway across the cart when I noticed him lagging behind. He didn't have enough strength to pull himself free. "Go," he shouted, "leave me and take this with you." Throwing the water bottle at my feet, I was stun-locked. I couldn't just leave him there. I couldn't have someone else on my mind. If I died, so be it. And so, I ran back towards him, the darkness fast approaching, managing to get his leg out of that door and pulling him back up. He looked at me the exact same way he did when I threw that ticket. Running just a few more carts, my body couldn't function anymore. All that walking, all that sneaking, all that running, it got the best of me. I thought this was it. As I began falling unconscious, my last thought were of both regret and, paradoxically, satisfaction. The first thing I saw when waking up was the face of an older woman. Long gray hair was caught in a ponytail that was draped over her slouched shoulder. Her clothes were modest, a beige sweater and a pale blue long skirt, wearing a transparent veil of the same color on her head. A deeply wrinkled face began forming a smile when she saw me waking up. "I am glad you made it, dear." A voice that could only be described as that of a caring grandmother came out of her. "I was afraid you were gone from this world." "Where am I?" "You're safe now, child." I tried standing up, but that woman stopped me. "Don't worry, we will talk more after you manage to get your strength back. When you're done resting, go to the car to the right. We would love to have a talk with you, especially Matt." And with that, she stood up and left me alone. Having slept somewhat, I decided to write down everything that happened so that I could not forget. I had to remember everything, especially that crimson-red figure I saw when I ran back to Matt. If there is any God in this world, in this subway, I beg you to help me. I implore you, so that something, anything, would come and help us get through this. Beg that my cries of help will be heard, because right now, I'm this close to getting caught as well. That everyone else. I am hiding under the chairs, a few carts away from the main one, hoping that I can somehow help the rest, or at the very least, manage to slip away. It's not selfish if I don't help them out, right? If I run, I can just find a new group. No, I can't lie to myself. If I leave now, I wouldn't be able to live with the guilt. I need to calm myself down. I need to continue. Maybe someone can give me some insight I can't see. Please. After Gertrude left, the old woman I found watching over me as I woke up, I fell right back to sleep. I dreamed I was in a park, going out for an evening stroll with Marie. The light breeze was gently blowing past us as autumn's leaves were falling down, covering the walkway like a blanket. The sun, going beyond the horizon, shimmered in the small waves of the lake we found ourselves stopping at, giving the atmosphere around us an air of tranquility. I've never felt so at peace, watching the light bouncing from the lake into Marie's emerald eyes. She turned and smiled at me, giving me that cheeky grin I always enjoyed staring at. Holding my hand, she told me that everything will be alright, and I believed her with all my heart. The last orange rays of the sun were suddenly replaced by the cold light of the subway when I woke up again. I almost began to cry, not knowing if I woken up from a dream or just now entering a nightmare. It's been a few days since I've entered this place, and I haven't eaten anything. Up until then, all the adrenaline pumping inside my body kept me somewhat functional. However, having somewhat of a peaceful moment, the pain of hunger kicked in like never before. Making sure that my phone was still with me, slowly I walked to the carts where everyone else was in. Right as I entered, 15 pairs of eyes, both young and old, stared at me. Look who finally decided to join us for dinner. I heard a familiar voice yelling at me from the other side of the cart. Almost went back there to check if you're still with us. I'll be quiet, you. The old woman said, can't you see he is barely awake as is? Leave the poor kid be. It's alright. I barely managed to mutter, my eyes still adjusting to the light. Did you say dinner? Why yes he did, mister. A new voice jovially rang out, a slight southern tinge to her accent. Sit down, poor thing, you must be starving. No, yeah, I am actually, well you're in luck. Today we managed to catch some of the good stuff. Here, take this. This woman, Helen, proceeded to stab a small slab of meat with a pocket knife, taking it from a pipe that was running at our feet across the cart, putting it on a piece of plastic. This is quite nice actually, speaking through bites. Tastes like chicken. What is it? Rat. I almost puked the second I heard that. Most of the people present chuckled a bit. Apparently though, 2 guys got slightly offended when they saw the disgust on my face. You got to eat fresh rat, and you act like that. One of the guys said, you should be grateful. The other agreed. Looking in their direction, a pair of twins were giving me a nasty look. They couldn't have been older than 15. Michael, Gabriel, an older man, who still looked a bit younger than Matt, began scolding the two. It's not polite to talk to a stranger like that. You two better apologize to him. That's right, dears, said a woman sitting next to him, her voice a bit gentler, but still as firm as the man's. He is clearly new around here. We've taught you better than that. Michael and Gabriel held their head down and apologized. I told them it's fine, and that they shouldn't worry too much about it. Reluctantly, I went on and finished the rat meat, given the fact that it was either that or starving. Oh, don't be such a baby, said Helen with a big grin on her face. You'll get used to it. Hell, I dare even say I'm proud of managing to make it taste as good as it does. I am so glad you're here with us, Helen. Can't find a finer cook in these parts, encouraged the twins' mom. Indeed, best rat meat cook on this side of the subway. The dad joked. Better than that cockroach stew you attempted last week, John. Aha, not missing a beat, Emily. Of course, dear. If I wasn't around, who would make fun of your cooking attempts? Yes, I know I'm a very good cook, just like how you are one amazing masseuse. My back still hurts. After that, they laughed and hugged each other, much to the dismay of the twins. Seeing them like that made me wish I was next to Marie. Once everyone had their dinner, we remained in this living room of sorts, and everyone began to chat with each other. Matt and John were talking about the old days from before the subway, and who's the next to go hunt for supplies. Gertrude, Helen, and Emily were talking about what they should do for breakfast, and Michael and Gabriel were playing with an old set of cards. Seeing everyone so relaxed was odd, given the circumstances, but at the same time, I couldn't help but feeling a bit better too, finally being able to not feel on edge ever since I got here. Looking around, I noticed that a good portion of chairs were missing, giving the cart a feeling of being bigger than it actually was. It was nice having some sort of breathing room, as much as a subway would allow. Further looking around, I saw a wall socket a few feet away. I quickly patted myself, and thankfully I had my charger on me. Plugging it in, I was so relieved when I saw it working. My phone won't be dying anytime soon. Afterwards, looking at the ceiling pipes, I noticed some plastic boxes on them, glued to the ceiling. John noticed me staring at them a bit confused. Oh, you looking at the makeshift fridges? Makeshift fridges? Yeah, quite proud of them actually. Made them years ago, before my blowtorch ran out of gas. Just cut some of the chairs and bars, welded them on the cold pipes, and boom, they can store meat and water. Okay, but if you can store meat and water, why did you have Matt go to the drip? We were running very low, replied Matt, and I would have gotten more if it wasn't for the blackout. You mean when the lights went all dark on us? Yep, you wouldn't want to be caught in there. If you thought the conductor was bad, the janitor is way worse. By janitor, do you mean that thing I saw when I came to get your foot unstuck? We call it that because it cleans everything from the carts he is in, leaving absolutely nothing behind once it is in there, ticket or no ticket. Thank God he doesn't move much. Matt told us everything, interfered John. You were brave for going back for him. We're very thankful you saved him. I still think it was very stupid. You could have gotten killed too. By that he means thank you. Don't you put words in my mouth, you old bastard. I know we don't have mirrors here, but you should look in one before commenting on anyone being old. Even Gertrude looks younger than you. Now, enough with the banter, interrupted Gertrude. Have you two decided who's gonna be the watch this time? I'm feeling very tired. Why not have the kid do it? He had his beauty sleep up until now. Yeah, said Matt thoughtfully, it would be a good chance for him to learn the ropes. What do you mean by the watch? I replied, slightly confused. Every time we go to sleep, one of us stays awake to look around for the conductor. If it comes, the watch wakes everyone up so that we can present our tickets. That's it, nothing else. I suppose you also have to keep watch for the janitor and other humans, but honestly, it's very rare for either of those to happen. I've only seen the janitor twice in all of my time here, and even rarer for someone else to get here. Oh, well, in that case, sure, I'll stand watch. Thanks, kid, I needed the sleep. Haven't had much since you got here. You should have seen him, said Helen, overhearing us. He was so worried about you, pacing around the cart all pent up. And you should also shut up. Helen, don't just butt in like that. But that's my job. I'd be so bored if I didn't. And you, Matt pointing at me, we still need to talk about that stunt you pulled. She then laughed for a little bit while I was completely lost. Matt tried his hardest to appear angry at Helen, but at most he looked slightly annoyed. It was nice seeing him like that. After everyone went to sleep, I remained awake to watch over. I had plenty of time to think about everything that has happened so far, still not believing any of this was real. I slapped myself again, just to be sure, and it still hurt. With that failed attempt, I tried to keep my mind occupied with the outside world, thinking of what I'll do once I manage to get out. If I manage to get out, I'd have Mom's cooking, and then I'd go out drinking with the boys, followed by visiting Marie's place, and watching movies until morning. Then we'd go hang in the park again, and then I'd finally, hey, you there, kid. A voice brought me back to reality, or at least what was my current reality. Matt, yeah, I'm here, what's up? Your shift is up. Really, it hasn't been that long, has it? I took out my phone, and sure enough, it's been a few hours since everyone else has gone to sleep. I suppose you're taking over. Now it's Helen's turn. Right now, we're gonna go rummaging. What do you mean by that? By that, I mean supplies. We need to go back to the drip to get more water. We'll also check around for the traps to see if we got more meat. We also need to look around for tickets. We already have enough to last all of us for at least a month, but it never hurts to get more. I also need to teach you how to handle yourself better. I don't need you to become a dead weight on us. Alright, kid? Yeah, okay, let's go. And with that, we took a few spare tickets and started going towards the drip. We didn't manage to get 2 carts away before hearing Helen screaming. They rushed back to our carts as fast as we could, and right as we were about to enter, we looked through the window to see what was going on. In the cart, there were 5 men standing up, all of them having guns, pointing them towards the rest, who were kneeling down. The man in front of everyone began to yell, "All right, everyone, we're either going to do this the easy way or the hard way. Hand over all your tickets and supplies, and no one's gonna get hurt. If you don't do that, you'll soon find out that you won't be needing them anyway. And also, if anyone tries to play the hero, you'll know what pain truly feels like. You can't just be taking our food and tickets," yelled back Helen. "We'll die out there." A man went in front of Helen, putting his gun right to her forehead. "Look at me," he growled at Helen. "Look at me. Does it look like I give a damn about any of y'all? One more word out of line, and that wall over there will soon have a new coat of red painting." "Hey boss," interrupted one of the other men. "You sure you want to kill this one? She looks so pretty. I am sure she'd be fun to mess around with." Beginning to chuckle to himself while looking at Helen. "You might have a point there, Brad," said the leader, lowering the gun from Helen's forehead. "However, you're missing one important detail." "What's that?" The guy didn't have time to finish his sentence. As soon as he opened his mouth, the leader shoved the gun in the man's mouth and pulled the trigger, blowing his head in front of everyone. I said one more word out of line. Now, looking back at the people who were kneeling, I can also be very understanding. Do what I say, and we'll get along just fine. Everyone was too mortified to say anything. I was too mortified to do anything. Matt, however, was fuming. Without thinking, he went right inside the cart, rushing the remaining 4 men. I stayed back, unable to move, as I watched Matt get shot right in his legs. And what did I say about playing heroes? Said the leader. Don't get me wrong, we could have killed him right now, but we'd much rather have him stay alive for now. It's quite fortunate that he stumbled back here. With this idiot dead, I need more people who'd be listening to me. And, more importantly, it shows me that there are more of you out there. Mike, Rich, go check out at least the next 15 cards in either direction. And come back after hearing that. I started crawling away, hoping I wouldn't get noticed. I had some leeway since the men were on the other side of the cart. Completely terrified, I find myself now hiding a few carts away. Wait, I heard him enter. I'm holding my breath, typing this last part, hoping I won't get noticed. Please don't notice me. Please don't notice. He hasn't, not even on the way back. Thank God, I heard the door to next cart open, leaving me again in the silence of the cart. Hopefully, I can find a way to save the rest. It's been a while. Now that I have enough time and battery, I can write down everything that has happened so far since my new friends had been overtaken by a group of armed people. The first few hours were bad, really bad. Having barely managed to slip away undetected, I set up camp 20 carts away from where everyone else was, trying my best to not just give up on everything and resign myself to the subway. My mind was racing with every possibility, not letting me be for 1 second. I could be eventually found out by the group and taken prisoner along with the rest. I could just starve to death in this place, or in the worst case scenario, I would run out of tickets and be taken by the conductor, the only proof of my existence here being a black puddle dripping on a chair. I was thinking how everyone would eventually forget about me, thinking I ran away to God knows where, how I would never return to the outside world, never feel the sun's warmth, never eat my mom's blueberry pie, never see Marie smile. I began to cry for the first time since I got stuck in this hellhole. In retrospective, it was cathartic, but in the moment, I couldn't focus on anything but the pain. Eventually, I fell asleep like that. The next 2 days I didn't do anything, bar for interacting with the conductor. I couldn't go back to everyone, because I'd be either gunned down or captured. On the other hand, if I left, I would be wrecked with the guilt of leaving people who cared about me, even for just a day, behind. I was paralyzed in that cart, but during the 3rd day, I began feeling like the conductor was my only companion, hearing his whistle being somewhat reassuring. For a brief moment, I wasn't alone. I wasn't forced to deal with anything else, just me, him, and his whistle. He didn't feel malicious then, just a man doing his job. If you have a ticket, he lets you be. If you don't, you have to pay a fine, just like the outside world. Hey, I remember saying out loud, this is just like the outside world. I'm just on my way home, of course. It's perfectly normal that I am alone here. It's late, so people are already home. Yeah, sitting up from the floor, I put myself down on the chair nearby. I will just pass the time sleeping a bit. 15 minutes should be enough. I will be home soon enough. I closed my eyes, wanting to sleep just a little bit. All my valuables were home, except my phone, which I kept closely. I almost dozed off when I heard the cart open. It couldn't be the conductor, because I would have heard him. It couldn't be one of the armed men, cause they would immediately yell to get down. It didn't smell like salt, so it wasn't the janitor. That meant that I've never seen that before. I bowed my head down, praying for the best. However, deep down, I knew I wouldn't have minded if this was it. Excuse me, someone next to me said, do you know when the next stop is? That voice was too familiar. Looking up, I was met by a pair of emerald green eyes. Marie, I yelled as loud as I could, jumping from my chair. Anthony, she yelled back, being just as surprised as I was. After the initial shock we felt, we hugged each other. Oh my God, I missed you so much, I said, beginning to cry. There, it's okay, she said, trying to calm me down. Don't worry, everything is okay, just let it all out. After finally managing to gather myself and making sure I was okay, we sat back down, leaving her backpack next to her. Afterwards, I heard my stomach grumble. Are you hungry? 1 second. Marie, after rummaging through her big backpack, took out a container with some pancakes and a thermos. I was going for a camping trip and wanted to eat those later, but here, you can have them. some tea too. That was the first real thing I ate since I got here, with the exception of that rat meat. And I began to cry again. She patted my back, but I could hear a slight chuckle. I mean, I know my cooking is good, but not crying over while eating good. They're delicious. She just smiled at me, saying I'm glad you liked them then. As I kept eating, Marie started to ask me about everything. Anthony, where have you been? Everyone's been looking for you. Well, here, pointing my hands all around the cart, mumbling with pancakes in my mouth. What do you mean here? You've been gone for like, at least a month. We almost gave up on finding you. Surely, you didn't just ride a random subway for that long. I looked at her, incredibly confused, and I stopped eating. Wait, what do you mean by at least a month? I've been here for like a week, maybe 2. Now, I am pretty sure you were gone for longer than that. See, she showed me her sport watch, and sure enough, it was dated for 2 weeks later. That doesn't make any sense. Look, my phone says differently. Yeah, that's concerning. Where the hell are we? That's when it hit me. In all the joy of finding Marie, and finally getting some decent food, I completely forgot that I am still in this subway. Even worse, she's in here now too. Panic began to settle back in. Hey, it's okay. I'm here. Breathe in and out, in and out. Thanks. As for where are we, I don't know. I've told you, I've been stuck here for what felt like weeks. Just cart after cart, endlessly stretching. You can't be serious. Does it look like I am joking with you? That's the scary part. She replied, you don't. Honestly, I looked her straight in the eyes. I have no idea how to get. A faint whistle was beginning to be heard, getting closer. Oh, said Marie, what a lovely tune. Reminds me of my grandpa. What are you doing? I was scrambling in my pockets, looking for the tickets. The whistling was growing louder by the second, and then I heard the door of the cart open. Marie, eyes down. Quiet, do not move. Wait, why are you saying that? She then looked at the giant figure of the conductor. As she took that image in, fear began to get to her as well. What the hell is that? Anthony, what? She then put her hands on her head and bent down, her head now being close to her knees. The conductor was approaching us. It had just a few feet left. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Found them right as he got in front of us. Tickets, please. The conductor echoed. Quick, take this and give it to it. I whispered loudly enough for her to hear. We gave him the tickets, and the conductor left. I was feeling very relieved, making Marie give me a very concerned look. What the hell was that thing? That was the conductor. It asks us for our tickets, and if we have them, it's harmless. And if we don't, I'd rather not find out. How did you even know that? How do you even have tickets in the first place? I got lucky. When I first got here, I found a guy who's been stuck here far longer than I. He gave me a ticket and took me to his group. Oh, but that's wonderful. Where are they? And more importantly, why are you here alone? They got captured a few days ago by a group of armed people. Oh God, are they alive? I don't know. I managed to escape. I've been in this cart ever since. Well, we better go and see. We can't just leave them, especially not after they took care of you. Yes, I know. I'm too scared. I can't. It's okay. Of course you're scared, especially after what I've just saw. We will figure something out. Don't worry. We'll go check the situation out after we get some rest. Okay. You can go sleep for a little bit. I'll stand watch for now. You sure you don't want me to stay up first? No, it's fine. I've done nothing these past few days. Might as well take the first watch to stretch out a bit, if you say so. In that case, I'll just mosey up over there. Wake me up when you need to sleep. Okay, of course. Alright then. Love you. Love you too. She then gave me a kiss, ruffled my hair, and went to sleep. With that, this update finishes the first 3 days. I am too tired to continue with the final 4, so I will finish the events of the past week tomorrow. I'm just waiting for my conductor shift to finish. After both me and Marie managed to get some rest, our number 1 priority was to find more tickets, because if we met the conductor now, it was game over for us. Considering we couldn't split up to cover more ground due to the fact that the road was blocked by the armed group, we walked together through the carts she has visited previously, hoping to find stuff she previously missed. As we moved cart by cart, we were checking for tickets everywhere, under the chairs, in the corners, below the hot pipes, etc. Where were you going? Asked Marie suddenly while we were searching. What do you mean? Well, you weren't taking the subway just for the fun of it when you got here. No, but what has that got to do with anything? Nothing, really. I just wanted to break the monotony. It's so boring. I feel like you're not taking this seriously. She stopped searching and looked a bit upset after saying that. I am. It's just that, you saying that you've been stuck here, not being able to get out for weeks, combined with whatever else is lurking around here. It's pretty stressful. I just wanted to take my mind off of it for a little bit. You're right. I am sorry. I've also been under a lot of stress here. And honestly, as glad as I am that you're near me now, I also can't help but be sad when I look at you. Why? Cause now you're also stuck here with me for who knows how long. We'll find a way out, right? My eyes dropped down. I don't know. Maybe we'll just be stuck here forever. The guy who saved me was here for at least 20 years. The old lady from our group probably even longer. I looked her straight in the eyes and said there are kids younger than us who have never seen the outside world. For God's sake. She just gave me a smile and said we can still hope. It was a fake smile. Marie never was that good at hiding her feelings, and quite frankly, I think that was why I began liking her all those years ago. It was very easy to see when she was happy, angry, when something bothered her. I hugged and said we can still hope. She hugged me back, and after a little bit, we went back to searching for tickets. If we're gonna be here forever, might as well be sure that me and her can live for as long as possible. I went to Central Park. What? You asked me where I went. That's where. Oh, I forgot I even asked. Feeling nostalgic. You could say that, yeah. Remember when we first met? Of course, sitting on a bench, admiring the view, sunny skies, a little breeze, and I hardly contained my laugh. Someone just so happens to trip right in front of me. Hey, Marie replied back, slightly annoyed. In my defense, the view was amazing. Sure was. Still had to make sure you were okay though. I know. Always the worrier. If I didn't worry, you would have probably fell over a cliff by now. True. Still not sure how that didn't happen. Hey, I found something. I went to where she was and sure enough, there were 2 tickets in the corner of the cart. Good, we're safe for now. Are you sure, though? This isn't sustainable. It took us this long to find only 2 of these. You're right, we have to do something else. If we could save the others, we'd have more than enough to last for a while. They stockpiled. Brilliant. Let's go save them. Not so fast. I stopped her from rushing back. Remember, they still have weapons. We need a plan. Right, we could take them by surprise. Can't really do that. They don't seem like the type to let their guard down. Overwhelming them isn't good either, unless we want everyone to get killed. Can we trick them somehow? How could we possibly do that? That's when an idea hit me. Marie, you said you were going camping, right? Yes. Did you take your art stuff? Always carry it with me. Take it out for a second. Rummaging through her backpack, she took out some art paper. I put one of the tickets we had on the paper and it fits. The thickness, the color, everything. Do you have scissors? I have my Swiss Army knife. Can you cut it like this? Draw a black circle on it. I can give it a try. 1 second. Sure enough, after she was done, we had a new ticket. Think this would fool the monster. Doubtful, but this isn't for the conductor. It's for the men. Exactly. If we can sneak at least a few of these with them, we might at the very least catch them off guard. What are we waiting for then? Said Marie, jumping from her chair, extending her arm to me. Let's go. Let's. We were around 50 carts away from the group. Leaving her backpack halfway there, we rushed until there were only 1 left. Peering over, I saw a familiar figure standing watch. Matt, stay back here, I whispered to Marie. It would be easier to sneak if it's just me. She nodded and hid under one of the chairs. I waved, hoping for Matt to notice, and once he saw me, he waved to come closer. Once I reached the door, he opened it slightly and began to whisper, "Where have you been? Kid, thought you bailed up on us." To be fair, I was about to give up on everything. Luckily, I had someone that helped me. Someone. Doesn't matter for now. How long can we talk? A little bit. Jax is asleep and has his men guarding him. And the rest. Me and John are standing watch for now. Why didn't you run away by now? They're keeping the rest as hostages. If any of us didn't come back when we were called, they'd shoot everyone else. Besides, if I manage to sneak away, can't get far with my busted leg. If that's the case, why didn't they kill you and leave? Matt gave me a very concerned look. You're getting pretty dark, kid. Luckily, For us, they liked the system John built, enough so that they decided to settle here. And that bastard of a leader is fond of lording over others, thinking we're better alive than dead. He will still kill us if we disobey though. How are you guys holding up? Terribly. Actually, it's only me in the cart. Why not come take a look? That sounds like a really bad idea. They're not particularly keen. They're too cocky with their guns. Think they have a safe pass. Never notice what's around them. After he said that, I sneaked in the cart and moved to the other side. What greeted my eyes almost made me puke. There were 4 people sitting around their leader, Jax, pointing their guns at everyone else. He was sleeping with his head on the lap of Helen, who had a purple eye and a bloody lip. For that matter, everyone else were sitting in the far corner, bruised and beaten. Emily, Michael, Gabrielle, even Gertrude had a red handprint on her face. I was seeing red, so much so that I almost went in. Thankfully, Matt was holding me back. That's how we went along. The reason Helen went along with that is because Jax likes them with attitude. Said he likes correcting disobedience. They keep John and Emily in check by threatening their kids. As for me, I can barely stand, much less fight. I kept looking at the scene in front of me. In that moment, I noticed one of the men had a different air to him. An air like he was pained of what he saw. "Who's that guy?" I said, pointing at the guard. "That's Nick." "Why? He looks like he doesn't want to be there." Matt nodded. He did strike me as odd for hanging out with them. Never saw him being a dick to the rest. Didn't really do much either. He might be of help. How exactly? Does Jax hold the ticket stockpile? Oh yes. He keeps it in one of the fridges. Takes one for each of us when the conductor comes. Always makes one of the men get tickets for him. And his group first. Says that if the pile runs out, he will have to make necessary sacrifices. We might have a way to get rid of him. And how? You'll see. As for how, I told Matt what me and Marie thought of. That might be able to work actually. I'll offer for the first scavenger hunt. It's most likely gonna be Nick, so maybe we can work it out. Great, see you soon. With that, I sneaked back to Marie and told her of what was going to happen. After that, we moved several carts and waited. With bated breath, hours have passed very slowly, but finally, we heard the door open. Start looking. We heard a man's voice say, "Sure thing, Nick. Just be a little patient, will you? I can barely move after all." "Look," he said in a hurried whisper. "I understand, but both of us know if we don't get back soon enough, Jax will go ballistic." "If that's the case," I said, "maybe we can help." After saying that, me and Marie went out of hiding. "Hands up." "Where the hell are you two?" he yelled, pointing the gun at me. "Easy now," said Matt. "They're friends. I have to go back to report to Jax." "You two, come with me." "Do you have to report to them, though?" said Marie. "You don't seem to like him very much." He lowered his gun slightly. "He is my boss. I have 2. Look at you," I replied. "You don't believe that. We know you don't like him. We can see it." Matt put his hand on Nick's shoulder. "Please," he said. At that point, Nick just dropped to his knees and started crying. We lowered our hands and walked towards him. Nick mumbled between his cries, "We were cops, for God's sake. We were supposed to help, not hurt other people." There, said Marie, putting her hand on his shoulder. "You can still help." "How? After everything we've done. After everything I've done." I told him what we wanted to do and he agreed. We gave him the fake ticket and sent him back with Matt, following him just a little bit behind. Eventually, they entered the main cart while we stood behind and watched. That was a good little nap. And look who's back. The cripple and the crybaby. Ain't that just lovely? He then stood up and gave Nick a big slap across the head. "Found anything good?" "We did find 1 tick. Jax took the ticket before he even had time to finish." "Fantastic. Oh, you returned just in time. Do you hear that, ladies? We have a visitor. Nick, give the rest of the tickets while at it." Soon, me and Marie heard the conductor's whistle. The leader clapped and said positions. Everyone. After everyone settled in their chairs, the conductor entered the cart and began checking. One by one, he got the tickets from the twins, their parents, Gertrude, Matt, Helen, Nick, and the remaining 3 guys. "Tickets, please," echoed the conductor in front of Jax. He then put the ticket on the long fingers of the conductor. There were a few seconds of silence, in which the conductor did nothing. Suddenly, the lights began to flicker intensely. Loud screeches were coming from the conductor as its body began to twitch violently, its arms flailing around. while the void of its head was losing its uniformity, making it look more like a cloud than anything else. Soon, however, just as suddenly, he went still again. His back was arched unnaturally, having a very sharp angle, with his long his bent backwards, touching the floor. The conductor broke the silence by yelling in deep, echoing growling. Counterfeiting is a serious offense. Criminals will need to pay for their crimes. With the lights still flickering, the pale white uniform of the conductor burst open, revealing a large, jagged mouth. Rows of teeth were spinning inside, and outside at blindingly fast speeds, with a blood-red eye in the middle. 5-ton-like things began extending from the conductor towards Jax, grabbing him by his neck, wrists, and ankles. "What the hell are you doing?" yelled Jax at his men. "Save me." The 3 men began shooting at the conductor, while Nick was staying perfectly still. Assault on subway personnel is a serious offense. Criminals will need to pay for the crimes. 15 more tendrils sprouted from the conductor, grabbing the men and guiding them into 3 new open mouths on the body of the conductor. All the men were screaming while the group tried their best not to make a sound. When everything was done, all that remained of Jax and his men were black puddles that dripped from the tendrils. The conductor returned to its normal form and began walking towards me and Marie. Both of us, despite being completely traumatized by the shock of what we just saw, managed to get on chairs and present the tickets. The conductor thanked us for our tickets and moved on. Once it was out of earshot, we entered in the main cart. Everyone else was still in their chair, completely pale. After a little bit of time, everyone managed to calm down and decided to go to sleep to forget what just happened. After everything was done, I thought we finally had some time to sit down and relax a bit. I thought that we will have smooth sailing from here. Me, Marie, and the rest could settle down. I was wrong. Among the horrors of the infinite subway, going from incomprehensible beings to your fellow man, who you wouldn't know whether or not he is an ally, or if he is ready to backstab you at the drop of a hat, there is another insidious mind killer: monotony. Miles and miles of the same exact cart, the pitch darkness that is ever present outside of the subway, the same smell of old plastic, the utter silence occasionally broken by a flickering light bulb. That's enough to get you eventually, or at least it would have been for me if I didn't have Marie and the rest of the group with me. We've been walking for what feels like weeks now, barely checking my phone from time to time to conserve battery. I am at 75% right now, which might seem like a lot, but we haven't seen another wall socket since we left our base behind. These updates, despite them being draining on my battery, are another reason I can keep going. In my mind, it serves as a sort of journal, one that, hopefully, reaches back to my old world, so that someone, especially my family, might look it over and know what happened to me. I will have to rewind time a bit, back to after we dealt with Jax and his group of men. I don't think anyone managed to get a wink of sleep after what we saw, given the fact that when I woke up, everyone had the same tired look on their faces. Marie, however, was sleeping next to me, cuddling against my shoulder, holding me like I was some sort of giant teddy bear. "No," I said, "I don't want onions in my burger," she said, still asleep. Despite what we went through, she was still able to make me feel like everything is okay. Yawn. "Good morning, everyone," Marie mumbled. "How is everyone?" "We're tired, kid," replied Matt, shuffling to put himself in a more comfortable position. "So don't be so loud." Sorry. Hey, it's alright, just mind the noise." She wasn't being loud, piped in Helen, slightly annoyed. "She was just being nice to y'all." "1," retorted Matt. "I know she was being nice. And 2, you're not one to talk about what's loud and what not. And, pray tell, what is that supposed to mean?" "It means that you're also quite loud when you speak," said John. Helen, crossing her arms. "Well, someone has to be loud enough to get through your thick skull, Matt. And someone needs to know when to stay silent so we won't get busted," mumbled Matt. "Hey," yelled Marie, suddenly jumping and standing up. "Don't fight over nothing." "Who said we were fighting?" replied Helen, giving Marie a confused look. "Hey, this is normal talk between us. Don't worry about it," added Matt. I could see Marie's face going red from embarrassment. It's alright, girl. It didn't look like we were fighting. By the way, we haven't had the pleasure," Helen said, going for a handshake. "Name's Helen. It's nice to finally have another girl in this guy party. And I'm Marie." "Oh, now that's a strong handshake." Think I'm gonna like you? Better watch out, Anthony, or I might just come in and sweep her of you." I gave her a pretty annoyed look at that remark. "Relax, I was just joking. Had a girlfriend before coming in here, and I am anything but a cheater. Darling was the apple of my eye," she said, looking sad for a second, but quickly shaking it off. "Besides, I saw you two while sleeping. Couldn't take her off of you even if I tried." Both me and Marie were beet red at that point. "Helen dear," said Gertrude, "why don't you leave those two alone and start with breakfast? Think everyone's hungry." "Yeah, we are," said Michael and Gabriel in unison. "It would be nice to have something to eat," said John. Everyone kept saying they'd like to eat. Everyone except Nick, who sat alone in the other corner of the cart, hidden behind the chairs. "Alrighty then," said Helen, one rat patty coming up. She took the rat meat from one of the makeshift fridges and put it on the lower pipes, where it began sizzling. Soon enough, everyone began eating. "Do you have anything else to eat in that backpack of yours?" I think I still have some soup and some chicken tenders, some marshmallows and chocolate too." "What are those?" said Gabriel, who overheard us. "What do you mean, what are those? Never heard of anything of what you said. We grew up in this place. Is that some kind of animal?" Marie's eyes widened. "Oh, you poor things. You should have some." Helen extended her arm and said, "Give it here, I'll warm those up real quick." Soon enough, the smell of chicken filled in the cart. "It's delicious," said Michael, who finished his piece as soon as he got it. "Thank you so much," said Gabriel, who finished his even faster. "I'm glad you liked it." Marie looked around the cart and said, "You guys have been here for a while, right?" said Marie. "You can have some as well if you want." "Don't mind if I do," said Helen, who tore a piece of the chicken really quick. "Only a little bit," said John. "Likewise," added Emily. "I'll pass. I'm full of rat right now," said Matt. "That is very kind of you, dear, but you should save it for yourselves." "I'm more than happy with the rat Helen cooked for us," said Gertrude. Nick remained silent. Helen, noticing that Nick wasn't saying anything, stood up from the pipes and went to him. She looked right at him and said, "Not hungry?" Nick whispered a very soft, "Not really," before everyone heard his stomach rumbling. "Really? You sure?" said Helen. "Look, I appreciate the thought, but I don't deserve it. Not after what we've done to you all. I'm not sure why I'm even here still. I'll just go now." Nick began to rise, but Helen put her hand on his shoulder and forced him to sit back down. "Your guys were mean, yes, and despite how horrifying it looked, I am really glad that they got eaten by the conductor." "Then why? Let me finish. With that being said, you didn't look like you were enjoying yourself. Not like them. And I still remember you giving us bandages when you could." And I interrupted Helen. "Without you, I don't think we could have sneaked in that ticket to Jack's, right?" "See," said Helen, giving him a bit of chicken tender. "Come eat with us." Nick began crying. He took the chicken and followed Helen, finally sitting along with the rest of us. "Righto, now that everyone is full," said Helen, feeling pumped up. "I feel like a little bit of hunting is in order." "Hunting?" asked Marie, and did. "When I looked in the fridge, I saw we were running low on meat, so we should go and hunt some. We're lucky, however, that guy's group had a bunch of water saved up." "Oh, can I come? Glad you asked. Someone has to show you how we get around these parts." "And I," said John, "also want to go check up on the traps I've set up." "Anthony, want to join me?" "Sure." "Great. We won't need to go too far, mainly cause we're not that low. 100 carts each is enough for now. Let's go then." With that, me and Marie parted ways for now, her and Helen going in one direction, while me and John went the other. As we walked along, he was showing me all the makeshift traps he set up in the carts, like small boxes the rats can enter, but can't get out of, and some small noose strings meant to catch the rat's legs. Once the rat was caught, he showed me how he killed it with his knife, and how to check for the good meat. Weirdly enough, I wasn't off put by that sight. They also boiled them first to eliminate any bacteria they might have. Must have taken quite a while for you to figure out all that stuff. "Oh, you bet. We're lucky we found Helen pretty soon after landing here. Otherwise, I'm not sure if we would have survived. Kind of like how Matt helped me." "Exactly. Now, I have to ask." John's tone changed to be more father-like. "You and that girl, Marie, are you serious about her?" "Of course I am. We've been together for 5 years now. And, might I ask, why haven't you proposed yet?" I felt a big rush of pain flowing when I heard that question. I was about to, before I came here. was saving up for a ring for a while, and once I got it, I would have proposed where we first met. Once I got here, I didn't know what to do. I was scared I would never see her again. Still feels like a dream that we found each other in here, even if I'm scared that something might happen to her at any moment. John gave me a big smile and put his hand on my shoulder, looking me straight in the eyes. Studying his face more carefully, I saw that he had a small scar on his lips, barely hidden by a patchy beard. Attaboy, you remind me of myself a little when I got here with my wife. I felt the same exact thing as you do now, doubly so considering she was pregnant with our boys at the time. You have to learn that she's not as helpless as you think. I know, I don't want to lose her again. I understand, Anthony. That feeling will always be there. For me, it still is, but you will learn to live with it. Saying that, he took off a golden ring he was wearing and said, "Here, this is my wedding ring. I will ask Emily to give you her ring as well so that you can do it properly." I was in complete disbelief. I couldn't possibly. No, I insist. John stopped me, putting the wedding ring in my hand and closing it. I already know who I'm married to, and besides, if Emily heard about this, she would have done the same thing. It's time for these rings to be put on some new hands. I put the ring in my pocket and went and gave John a big hug. He hugged me back, patting my head slightly, saying, "It's okay, Anthony, it's okay." After I finished hugging him, he said, "Think we have enough meat for now. Let's head back and bring in the haul." A while later, we arrived back to base, right as Helen and Marie were back. "Sure looks like you got a good haul, eh?" said John to Helen. "Right back at ya, but we can brag a little bit more cause we found some tickets as well." "Nice. We should be good for a while on both water and food." "Finally, some good news around here," said Matt, hearing him being a tad happier than usual. Everyone then began hanging out with each other. John, Emily, Matt, and Gertrude were talking about old history stuff. Gabriel and Michael were running around the carts playing tag. Nick and Helen were chatting as they put the meat in the fridges, while I put my phone in the socket to charge a bit and cuddled with Marie. "Does your internet still work?" "Yeah, why? Wanna watch a movie?" Hearing that, I realized I haven't had the time to show everyone what my phone can do. "Hey everyone," I yelled, "wanna watch a movie?" They looked confused. "How?" asked Matt. "Last time I checked, we don't have a cinema close by on this," and I showed my phone to them. "Oh nice, you have a phone with you," said Nick and Helen at the same time. "You don't. Jax confiscated ours when we got here, said they were important and in need for safekeeping. He then went and lost them. So much for safekeeping. As for me, I forgot at home," added Helen. "A movie? What's that?" asked Michael. "You'll see. Now, what movie do you want to watch?" "He still didn't explain how we'll watch a movie here of all places," said Matt. I then proceeded to open the internet and look for a movie site. I also told him about how it works. It's kind of like a small TV where I can search for everything. Besides me, Marie, Helen, and Nick, everyone was looking amazed as Matt fiddled around with it. "We should watch something with adventure," said Marie. "With everything around us being so gloomy and samey, we might as well have some fun." "What comedy though?" I asked. "How about the Lord of the Rings trilogy?" asked John. "I always loved those movies. I still remember seeing them with you when they first appeared," said Emily. "Lord of the Rings it is then." I then put on the first movie, as everyone sat around the phone, still in the socket. As the movie played, the kids were surprised to see everything that was happening, from the other people on the screen to stuff we normally don't think about, such as the sky, the sun, grass, trees, etc. Everyone was explaining to them what those things were, as me and Marie sat quietly, our backs against the doors. I closed my eyes a little bit, wanting to relax. "It was a good idea you suggested this," I told Marie as I patted her head. "Right? It feels like we're having a movie night with family and friends." "Yeah," the kids being a bit too loud, the rest trying to quiet them down or tell them about the movie. Not to mention the popcorn smell. I suddenly inhaled deeply, praying that it wasn't what I thought it was, but sure enough, it was a smell of salt. My face grew pale the moment I realized it, and jumped up, quickly dragging Marie with me and grabbing my phone. "Run," I yelled at everyone as the carts behind us were starting to go pitch black. They realized what was going on and began to grab whatever they could as quickly as possible. John and Emily got the kids, Nick got his gun, and his backpack. Helen picked up Gertrude, who was small enough to be carried around. They then all began running, all except Matt, who was still sitting down. "What are you doing?" I yelled at him. "I can't run with this leg, kid. I'd just drag you down and get you killed." "Oh, for heaven's sake," I yelled and went back for him. "Tid, I appreciate the gesture, but you can't carry me on your own." "He is not alone though," yelled Marie as she ran back as well. "Both of you are idiots," said Matt, however smiling a little bit as me and Marie began carrying him, one arm on each of our shoulders. John was in front of us, opening the doors and leaving them open. The darkness was closing in on us, the figure of the janitor being visible in front of it. Looking behind, he was definitely not as pristine as the conductor normally is. While the conductor was somewhat composed, the janitor was far more chaotic, as the barely visible red man was bouncing around the cart, shaking and trembling, as if he was a junkie craving a fix. To say it was a terrifying sight would be an understatement. When we got 20 carts away from the base, the janitor almost caught us. The cart behind us got dark, and we were too far away to get to the next one. Fortunately, it stopped right then and there. Everyone took a moment to catch their breath as the lights began to turn back on where the janitor was. Afterwards, we began walking back, and when we did eventually get back, we were greeted by nothing. Everything we had, the fridges, the food, the water, the wall socket, all was gone and replaced by a cart, identical as all the ones we've been in. Some of the group was looking frantically, others broke down crying. I just sat there in complete shock, trying not to lose it again. Eventually, however, we had to accept the reality that we lost everything we didn't carry with us when we ran away, and we began walking the same, boring carts over and over for days on end, only stopping to sleep, hunt, get tickets, and deal with the conductor. We haven't seen the janitor since then either. No one really spoke with each other for quite some time, bar the occasional find or a conductor announcement. That was until we found a body. In one of the carts, there was a skeleton of a man clutching some sort of leather book with nothing else valuable on him except for an empty backpack and the clothes he was wearing. Taking the book from the skeletal hands, I opened it and began reading. "My name is Pablo Ramirez. In the case someone finds this in the wake of my death, I will do my best to document my findings in this journal as I explored the subway, searching for the garden and the lifetime subscription pass." I've been struggling to make ends meet lately. My day job is with a small company still finding its footing in a competitive field. I was due a raise, but that disappeared like a whisper in the wind when we lost out on a massive account last week, an account that would have made us a significant player in the field. After the loss, the company instituted an immediate pay freeze. Let's just say I wasn't surprised at the timing. Worse, my actor, waiter roommate decided they could no longer afford to live in Los Angeles. They finally did what they long promised they'd never do, move back home, with no immediate people to replace them, and rent due at the end of the month. I was stuck paying the entire bill. They apologized and shed tears, but had no extra cash to help. 10 hours later, they were a ghost. While I stared blankly at the now empty bedroom, a horrid thought crossed my mind. I was going to have to find a new roommate, and soon. The idea of going through the arduous process of finding someone to live with made me feel physically ill. Half the people who applied were psychotic strivers hell-bent on world domination, or, failing that, control of the shared TV. The others were so festooned with red flags, they looked like a walking bag of blood. King Arthur had an easier time pulling Excalibur from the stone than I did finding a non-psycho roommate in a city determined to keep cranking out and attracting weirdos. As a result of my money crunch, I turned to Tasker. Tasker is an app where people hire you to do odd jobs for cash. The number of shelves I've installed for people is in the hundreds. I've also walked dogs, cut grass, pulled up garbage cans, and cleaned out garages. Each time I clicked on the little T logo on my phone, I aided the never-ending battle with my landlord. While the Tasker jobs helped close the gap, I was still short. The first of the month was fast approaching, and it gave me hives. I sold DVDs and Blu-rays. I sold blood and plasma. I inquired about selling sperm, but was told thanks but no thanks, which wounded my pride more than I thought it would. I started daydreaming about bank security systems and wondering if I could get away with a robbery if I really had to. But my dreams of larceny would soon take a backseat when I heard the melodic chime from the Tasker app. It had recommended a job I might be interested in. I wasn't going to respond right away, but my curiosity got the best of me. My jaw dropped. It was a house-sitting job in Beverly Hills, and the pay was more than I'd earn on my regular paychecks. The amount of money could not only seal the gap, but it would buy me time to find a decent roommate. Suddenly, the day looked brighter. I had to win over the homeowner first. Her name was Marcia, and before she agreed to give me access to her multi-million-dollar property, we'd have to meet in person. If we hit it off, my rent was as good as paid. Marcia was in her late 60s and had allowed herself to age gracefully, unlike the rest of Southern California. The corners of her radiant, almost hypnotic, blue eyes crinkled when she smiled. Her hair had been a starless sky black in her younger days, but was now streaked with white comets. Though age had stooped her shoulders some, she held her head gracefully high as she whisked me into each room of her mansion. Every time she presented a room, it was as if she was reading a museum exhibit plaque. She was quick with a joke, and her calm, soothing voice made me feel like I'd known her for years. Marcia impressed me, so did the house. She told me that this whole area was originally a rancho occupied by the Quia family. The Quias had owned and worked the land for decades. Their hard work paid off, and they became quite wealthy. Then, the Mexican-American War broke out. Before the ink dried on the unfair Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, white settlers started crossing the continent. According to Marcia, the Quia's claim to their ranch was not honored by the United States, and they were violently forced off their land. They did not go quietly. Blood was spilled by both sides, but in the end, the surviving Quia family fled. Nobody knows precisely what happened to them, but legends persist. Some say they left for the protective bosom of Mexico City. Others say they moved north and changed their names. The most disturbing of the tales was that the family was ambushed during the night and murdered in their home. The bodies were torn apart and scattered across the land. Regardless, their removal was not pleasant, except for the main house, which still stood like a crypt in the backyard. The entire Quia ranch was torn down. Overnight, the family had been stripped of their humanity. If the harsher stories are to be believed, their lives. After hundreds of years of ownership, all that remained of the Quia family was the small River Rock house and rumors of their demise. That's horrific, I said when Marcia pointed out the house from the back patio. It was. Those poor creatures, she said wistfully. Have any survivors ever contacted you or asked for compensation? Heavens no. Even if they did, the house and land have been partitioned and sold dozens of times. They'd have no recourse. I suppose so, I said, but I'm not a monster. I've kept the house standing. I feel like they're still here as long as that house still stands. A testament to the tenacity of the Mexicans, Marcia added in that boomer way of both complimenting and insulting a person's race. Marcia escorted me into the dining room, where an impressive display of treats was laid out. She talked about the other people that had owned the house, while she served me finger sandwiches and freshly made lemonade. Finally, she got to the crux of the matter. She needed to go back east to see her ailing mother and needed someone to stay at the house for the week. I could stay in the guest room on the main floor and had free run of the house except for one area, the Quia house. It's not a guest house, I asked. No, it's more of a relic than dwelling at this point. It's the reason I don't like people going in there. I get it, I said. It's nothing personal, dear, Marcia said. Even I don't go in there. I'm so afraid it'll collapse if anyone even breathes too hard near it. Not up to code. I joked. Not in the least, she said. Have you ever been in there? Once, a long time ago. Too depressing for my liking. Why not knock it down? Marcia must not have heard me because she turned to me with a grin and asked, Is the pay acceptable for you, John? I wasn't sure if it was enough. It's great, actually. Thank you, I said. Do you need me to do any other little things around here? I hang a mean shelf. Oh no, just keep an eye on the place, collect the mail, and enjoy yourself. My nephew installed some sort of internet show thing last time he was over. Feel free to watch whatever on there. I never bother. Thank you, I said. My pleasure, she said with a warm smile. She reminded me of my grandma. I have a good feeling about you. I think you're perfect for the job. I felt myself blush and was unsure why. You're nice to say so. I hope I live up to the house's grandeur, I said. I'm sure you will, she said warmly. She handed me her spare keys. If you're taking any trips in the future and need someone to watch the place, I'll be happy to do it. Just text me and don't even bother with the app. You're sweet. I don't leave often, and I fear the next time will not be under the best circumstances. She leaned in and whispered, my mother is very ill. Sorry to hear that, I said solemnly. Marcia shrugged her shoulders. C'est la vie. The next day, Marcia caught a flight out of LAX, and I moved into the spare bedroom. This room was nearly as big as my apartment, and I could feel jealousy tickle up my spine. I unpacked my meager belongings and decided to give the house a once-over. Marcia had already given me a tour, but it's always different when you have free reign of a strange place. I wasn't planning on snooping, but I did want to get a lay of the land. Marcia didn't have any security system. I found that odd at first, as there were valuables everywhere, but it made sense after getting to know her style. She was old-fashioned and proper, and I wasn't sure if modern security cameras would blend with her decor. But even if thieves broke into the house, I don't think they'd know where to look. The house was reminiscent of the Los Angeles sprawl. It just kept going. I sighed. One old lady lived in a place that could easily hold a dozen or so. Didn't seem fair that I had to struggle for a bedroom when Marcia had several she used for storage. After the stroll, I decided to take in the grounds out back. There was an ornate swimming pool with a mosaic tile picture of Botticelli's Birth of Venus on the bottom. Beyond the pool was a beautiful English-style garden overstuffed with local vegetation. The sheer number of bees pollinating to and fro gave the area steady buzzing noise. Blossoming cherry trees shaded the dirt path I walked down. They ran along an artificial stream that carried fallen flowers to a drain at the end of the property line. The sun sparkled off the ripening red fruit. In short, everything back here was beautiful. Everything except the queer house. It sat in a small courtyard just off the back patio. It was surrounded by ancient oaks that cast long shadows over it. Every room on the back side of the house had a door to the patio. From where I was staying, I'd be no more than 20 feet from the structure. I felt myself shudder at that realization, though I didn't know why. The house wasn't ugly. In fact, in any other location, and with a realtor's panache, it would be described as cozy and sell above market value. But there was a heavy atmosphere around it. You could feel it in your bones. It was like a storm that was about to drop down enough water to sweep you away. The outside was made of dense river rock and dark timber. There were no windows, at least not anymore. They had been bricked up by previous owners. The door looked like something from an old Scottish castle, not a Mexican ranch house. Knowing Marcia's wealth and taste, I thought there was a chance the door might actually have hailed from the Highlands. I walked around the outside of the house, but I kept my distance. The foreboding made me cautious. I didn't think it was haunted. Ghosts aren't real, but Marcia had suggested that the Queers may have been murdered here. That carried weight with me. The house didn't pass a vibe check, and I decided to leave the relic alone and not come back. No need to stir up bad juju if I didn't need to. I was content to stay within the confines of the big house and waste the week. Sometime after dark, I heard a woman scream in the backyard. Without security cameras to check it out, I went to the window in my room and peeked through the blinds. The backyard was dark, doubly so because of the large shade trees. Save for a line of small solar path lights, the backyard looked like a bottle of ink. I wanted to pretend I hadn't heard it, but my conscience wouldn't let me ignore that yell. I was gonna have to go outside. I'm no shrinking violet. I'm a big guy, and I've been in quite a few scraps in my time. I've also taken Taekwondo for 5 years, so I know a thing or two about disarming a person. I felt confident that I'd be okay if someone was out there. I prayed that wasn't the case, but mentally prepared myself to brawl. I opened the door in my room that led to the backyard. As soon as the door swung open, you could feel the summer night heat cling to you. The sounds of nature intermingled with the surrounding city, creating a constant buzz of activity. And Jesus Tap Dancing Christ, was it dark? The moon was covered by clouds, and it was hard to see a few feet in front of you. Even with my phone's flashlight, it was impossible to see much. I moved slowly down the path and scanned the phone from right to left. and then back again. I figured I'd walk down to the back fence, and back. The screaming sounded like it had come from that direction. If someone was out there, attacker or victim, I wagered I'd find them near the path. "Hello," I said, pushing as much bass into my voice as possible. "Do you need help?" There was no immediate response. I repeated my question a few more times, but got the same result. I was starting to wonder if the yell had come from a passing car or a neighbor when I heard someone shuffling on the other side of the line of cherry trees. I stopped and turned my phone towards the noise. "Hello, hola," I heard a woman say back in a soft, scared voice. "Hola, necesita ayuda?" I asked, not sure if my high school Spanish held up. There was no response. "Hola," I said again. "Hola," the soft voice said again. "Eres tu quien gritaba?" She never answered my question about the screaming. After a few seconds, the voice said in a whisper, "Deberías irte aquí." This time I caught a glimpse of a woman in a white and yellow dress running through the trees. I veered off the path and headed toward where I saw the woman. I assumed I'd be running into someone hiding in the shadows, but after a few minutes of searching, I didn't find a soul. I was stumped. "Why did you tell me to leave?" I asked the air around me. I felt the stinging in my back before I heard the thump against my spine. "What the hell?" I said, stumbling forward a few steps. I caught my balance before I fell and quickly snapped around, ready to Jackie Chan some fool. But there wasn't anyone standing there. I rubbed my back where I had been hit and winced in pain. There was a welt, and I knew it was already bruising. I pointed my phone at the ground and saw a smooth round rock at my feet. I picked it up and felt the weight. It was hefty. I wondered where it came from when I was nearly blinded by a beam of light that flashed into my eyes. "Hey, what's going on?" asked a gruff male voice. "Can you get the light out of my eyes? Tell me, who are you first?" "I'm the house sitter. Marsha's gone. Her mom's sick. Call her to confirm if you want." I said, "Now, before I get permanent damage to my eyes, can you please move the leg?" The light went down to my chest. I blinked but could still see the bright beam in my vision. It'd be a bit before everything went back to normal. "How do you know her?" the man asked. "I don't, really. I was hired by a company." "Who are you?" "Her neighbor," he said. From behind him, I could hear his wife tell him not to tell me his name. "Okay, neighbor, can I help you?" We heard screaming. "Was that you? Are you serious?" "Well, do you know who it was?" "No, I came out here to check, too. I didn't find anyone. Every day, this place gets more like Van Nuys. I swear to God," the guy said. "I live in Van Nuys," I responded. "Well, there are some nice parts, I'm sure. Do you have security cameras?" Again, his wife chimed in and told him to not tell me anything. I rolled my eyes. "I'm not going to rob you, for God's sake. I'm curious because I heard a woman speaking Spanish back here, wondering if she was cutting through yards. I don't think you're going to rob us." "Great," I said. "Did you happen to see a Hispanic woman cross through your yard?" "Not since our housekeeper left," he said, laughing. I didn't join in. He stopped the chuckle. "If you could check your tapes, I'd appreciate it. There's no one back here now, but I want to make sure she's not in trouble or anything. If I see anything, I'll let you know." "Thanks. Sorry about the light in your eyes," the neighbor said. His wife berated him for showing weakness. I could feel her eye rolls like they were Southern California tremors. "I'll be here all week. If you hear a dude back here, it's me." "Sounds good. Have a good night," he said before disappearing back behind the fence. I heard his wife's angry whispering, and I laughed. I looked down at the rock in my hand, and it clicked. This looked like River Rock, just like the queer house. I looked up, and sure enough, the house was within my line of sight. Despite the heat, I shivered. I pocketed the rock and headed back inside. My nerves were as jangly as a puppet in the hands of a novice puppeteer. I checked my back and saw a raised welt. Whoever had chucked that rock had done a masterful job. I wasn't sure who had thrown it or where they had gone, but I worried they might return. I suddenly felt the lack of any security system at this place. I decided to do hourly checks of the property and ensure I was still alone. Each time I patrolled, I followed the same route. I walked through the upstairs rooms, the downstairs rooms, and the front yard. I finished my journey in the backyard. I avoided getting too close to the queer house on every trip. I walked around it but kept my distance. I did the checks 3 times, and nothing was amiss. After the last time, I felt myself relax. I was sure that whoever had been out there wasn't there anymore. I needed to calm down. The best way to do it was with an edible. I settled into the theater room, turned on a mindless action movie, and passed out. Around 3 in the morning, I heard the door to the theater room swing open. It snapped me from my THC-assisted sleep. I wanted to keep the element of surprise on my side, so I didn't move. At first, I wasn't sure someone was even in there, but then I heard the floorboards behind me squeak. The hairs on my neck stood on end. Someone was here. I balled my hands into fists. I planned to wait until the person was directly behind me and swing on them. I heard a footstep behind me, and I knew it was time. I popped up like a coiled spring and spun to deliver the haymaker, but before I even turned around, the person ran out of the room and slammed the door behind them as they did. I jumped up and followed after. I heard my room's door slam closed and assumed the stranger was running through my room to the patio. I got to my door and ripped it open to find my back door was swinging open. I dashed through the room and stepped into the backyard. It was pitch black outside. The solar lamps that lit the walkway had powered down, and the moon was covered by rolling clouds. I had left my phone in the theater room, so I didn't even have the weak bulb to help guide me. I ducked behind one of the cherry trees and let my eyes adjust as best they could to the darkness. Even when they did adjust, it was nearly impossible to see anything. I assumed we both were at the same disadvantage. I peered around the tree trunk, hoping to catch some movement in the dark. I had no real belief I'd be able to see anything, but I prayed I'd be able to track them by sound. If they moved near me, I could run towards the noise. A wind started blowing, shaking the trees. It made it harder to pinpoint any movement. If you were gonna run, the swelling of noise was the perfect time to do so. The other person must have agreed because they took off running for the back fence. I didn't hear it at first, but then the rhythmic pounding of footfalls cut through the shaking leaves. I dashed out from behind the tree and made for the fence myself. As I was sprinting after the intruder, a pale figure emerged from between two trees to my left and let out a blood-curdling scream. It sounded like the same scream from earlier. I was so caught off guard that I tripped over my feet and crashed to the ground. I thumped my head on the tile pretty hard and instantly felt the trickle of blood on my forehead. When I sat up, I was dizzy. I looked over where the screaming had come from and saw nothing. I tried to stand, but my wobbly legs made that difficult. As soon as I finally got upright, I heard someone at the fence. I saw the neighbor's motion light click on and knew they were climbing over. I felt a lump in my pocket and remembered I had the rock from earlier. In desperation, I pulled it out and threw it at the back fence. Maybe I'd get lucky and peg the person as they scrambled over the fence. I didn't, and the rock slammed into the fence with an echoing thud. I stood there, trying to catch my breath and feeling pain ripple through my body. What the hell had just happened? I was trying to process what was happening when I heard someone walking behind me. I turned around and saw another figure holding the flickering flame walking near the queer house. I wanted to run over to them, but was transfixed with the light like a moth. It never even came into my mind who was holding the flame. As the light moved to the side of the house, I heard the candle holder yell, "Moriras Acqui," before the light went out. I had retained enough Spanish to understand what the figure had just said. "You will die here." I stumbled over to where the figure had walked to, but like every other time, there wasn't anyone there. It became clear at this moment that maybe I wasn't dealing with thieves. Perhaps this was something altogether unnatural. I wanted to say ghosts, but my rational brain couldn't cross that Rubicon. Then again, my rational brain also couldn't explain what the hell just happened to me either. I thought about calling Marcia, but realized how late it was on the East Coast. She was probably dead tired from the travel. I'd do it first thing in the morning. I went back inside and checked on my head. I had a little gash over my eyebrow, but it had clotted. I cleaned it up and put on a butterfly stitch for good measure. Afterward, I went to every door and window and locked them shut. I did a little mental account of who might be outside. There was the woman in the white and yellow dress, the figure that screamed like a woman, and the candle guy. Of the three, the woman in the dress didn't harm me, at least not yet. Anyway, realizing I wasn't going to solve any of this and feeling confident that I was safe inside, I finally settled into bed. I was still terrified, but the adrenaline that had sustained me was gone. I felt my eyelids get heavy. I let the dark surround me and I passed out. It was the chirping birds that woke me up. They were so loud, it sounded like they were inside the room with me. I yawned, stretched, and rubbed the sleep from my eyes. My head was pounding from last night's fall. I opened my eyes, and my blood ran cold. The window and back door in my room were wide open. I jumped out of bed and backed out of my room into the hallway. That's when I noticed that every window and door in the entire house was open. What the hell? I muttered before stepping on something hard and yelping in pain. I grabbed my foot and rubbed the arch. That's when I saw the thing I had stepped on. It was the rock I had thrown at the fence last night. There was no way that should be here. Nobody would have been able to find that rock. I blindly threw it into the sprawling backyard on the darkest night in months. There should be absolutely no way I could be looking at this rock. Yet, here it was, once again causing injury to my body. Hello, police department. Anyone here? It was coming from the front door. I pocketed the rock, stood up, and tried to collect myself. After a few deep breaths, I headed out of the hallway towards the front door. Sure enough, 2 uniformed police officers were standing there. About 10 feet behind them, I saw the neighbor and his wife. He waved. She glared. "Can I help you?" I asked. "We were wondering if you could help us, partner," the taller cop said with a fake smile. "How's that?" Neighbors came out for a walk this morning and saw all the doors and windows open here. Thought that was strange. Any reason why you did that? "I didn't," I said. "Is there someone else in the house with you?" He tried to step in, but I shifted my weight in the door frame. He noticed but didn't call it out. His partner, a guy with the body of a former high school fullback, clucked. "Any reason you're blocking the door? Any reason you need to come inside?" I asked. "We're just making sure you're okay," the taller cop said. "I'm fine, thanks." Neighbor said you got into a scuffle last night. The high school fullback spat. "Who with?" "I don't know. Someone was on the property and I scared them away," I said, looking past the cops at the neighbor. "I'm sure he told you that already. Why didn't you call the police?" "Person was gone and didn't think it mattered. Plus, this ain't your house," the fullback said. "Yes, I'm house sitting. Would you like to see the Tasker app for confirmation?" Before they answered, I pulled out my phone and showed them the details. The short cop ignored it. The tall one didn't. "That seems in order," the taller cop said with another smile. I watched his eyes, and he was looking behind me. "Sure, there isn't anyone else in here. No one I invited. Want us to do a once-over? I'll be okay." "You sure? Not worried about all these windows and doors being open? Anyone could have just walked in and heard you were stolen something." "I'm fine. I just woke up, and I'm going to check out the place. If anything seems out of place, I'll be sure to give you guys a call. It'd be no issue for us if we gave the house a once-over. We're here to help." I knew they were trying to get inside the house. My guess was the neighbor's wife had poisoned the well, and the cops were suspicious of me. I didn't feel like getting railroaded by the police today. Unless they could solve a potential ghost issue, their presence here was more a hindrance than a help. "No," I said. "I'm good. I wouldn't mind if we gave it a glance," the short cop said, "to be safe." "Do you have a search warrant?" That changed the tone of the conversation. "We're not accusing you of anything," the taller cop said, "just making sure you're okay." "I've told you I'm fine. Is there anything else I can help you with?" The cops shared a look. There was a conversation and a glance. "How far are we going to push this to appease some rich neighbor?" Finally, the tall cop gave me another store-bought smile and said, "Nope, I think we're done here." I closed the door and let the police go have a chat with the neighbors. I started closing the windows, but lingered a bit to see the interaction. They spoke in stage whispers, and I heard most of the wife's words. She wasn't pleased. She mentioned someone setting off their motion sensors last night and assumed it was me. When she saw the windows and doors, calling the cops was a no-brainer. I moved through rooms in the house, shutting the windows and doors. As I did, I wondered how many different people or ghosts were watching me do so. I'd get another visit from Starsky and Hutch if anything unusual happened near the neighbor's property. I already assumed that I would be getting another visit from one of the 3 ghouls in the backyard. I started thinking that maybe this job wasn't worth the hassle. Then I remembered how much I was being paid and came to my senses. After I closed the house back up, I decided to give Marcia a call. It rang 5 times. She didn't seem to have a voicemail, and I was about to hang up when she answered. "Hello. Hey, it's John from Tasker. How are things at the Shadow?" "Okay. Hey, real quick, have you ever had any strange interactions here?" with hobos. No, with, like, spirits. I don't really drink. Well, champagne sometimes, but ghosts. Like, ghosts here. Marshall laughed, and I could feel the blood rush to my face. I can't say that I have, dear. I've had issues with rats. Are you sure it's not rats? Pretty sure, I said. What's going on? Do I need to return? No, I've just heard some weird noises in the backyard and in the house, and some windows seem to have opened by themselves. Is that common here? Well, I have had some issues with the latches. The house is nearly as old as the good Lord himself. John, she laughed. I joined in with a laugh so fake yet so convincing it should have come with an Emmy. It must be faulty latches. I'll double check them, I said. You haven't gone into the queer house, have you? No, I said, taken aback. Good. It's so unstable. It looks pretty solid, I said, adding, it stood for over 100 years. Looks can be deceiving, she sighed. I have to get going. He let me know if any real problems emerge. Huh? Before I could say bye, she hung up. I stood there, more confused about everything. I knew I had eyes on me, the living and the dead. Anything I did would be met with some sort of response. But I needed to do something. The figure last night mentioned I would die here. Not exactly a ringing endorsement to stay. That said, I had seen the candle figure after I had thumped my head real good. Maybe I had seen something that wasn't there. Maybe my brain was skipping like a CD player in a jogger's pocket, making some new song from the interruptions. I needed independent confirmation something odd was going on. I wanted to go to the neighbor to see if there was any footage, but I knew I couldn't. If I showed up now, they'd think I was there to exact revenge for them calling the cops. I needed someone who knew something about paranormal stuff. I flipped through my contacts and sighed when I came to the person who could help me, Maggie. Maggie and I had met through a dating app and instantly clicked over text. She was a bit of an eccentric, but we had good chats. She kept me on my toes, and I liked it. Her personality was a bit outside my comfort zone, but I was willing to give it a go if she was. We met up for dinner, which was as awkward as a fart in church. Any magic we had online disappeared like a mirage. In person, while we might not have been a romantic fit, Maggie was still an interesting person. The magic returned when the pressure of being a couple went out the window. We chatted often, and our conversations took wild turns. She was way into paranormal stuff and told me all about the investigations she went on. She posted them to her TikTok and YouTube accounts and had a decent following. I watched a few, and let's just say I wasn't a convert. We drifted when she started dreaming that great harm was going to come to me, and that I should be aware that dark figures were looking for me. That was enough of a jolt for me to maybe wind down the chats with her. At the time, they seemed outlandish, and vaguely like she was threatening me. Eventually, we stopped talking, but now those weird-ass dreams started making sense to me too. I swallowed my pride and sent her a text. Hey, can I ask you a question about the paranormal? My phone rang 2 seconds later. It's happening, isn't it? I don't know, I said. Tell me everything, Maggie said. I did. Over the next 15 minutes, she quizzed me on any number of things. I answered her questions as best as I could. Maggie told me she had a friend who would not only be able to confirm that I wasn't crazy, but also be able to help. I gave her the address and hung up. An hour later, there was a knock on the door. I opened it to reveal the neighbor. He, again, apologized for the cops. I said it was fine and was about to shut the door on him when he told me he had something I should see. He pulled out his phone and pressed play on a video from his security camera. I shielded my eyes from the sun and squinted to see the black and white video playing. It was from a camera pointed at the fence line. The timestamp in the corner was 2:45 in the morning. At first, nothing happened. I started to move, but he quickly said, just keep watching. I'm glad I did. On screen, I saw the flickering of a candle appear from nowhere. Again, a shadowy figure held it, but I couldn't distinguish any other features. They walked towards the fence and then disappeared. The video stopped. What happened? I asked. I don't know, but look at this from about 15 minutes later. He hit play, and I heard a loud thump and recognized the noise as the rock I had thrown at the fence last night. Right after, a figure sprinted through the fence. They blurred across the screen until they were gone. I rewound the footage to get a good look at the figure, but it was too blurry to make anything out. What was that? I asked. I don't think it was a thief, he said. It It traveled through the fence. What traveled through the fence? I looked up and saw Maggie standing at the door. She gave me a warm smile, and I felt a sense of ease come over me. She could help me. I felt safe with her around, like she was protected against these things. I showed her the video, and she shook her head. Oh yeah, we're dealing with ghosties. I thought you were bringing someone over to check. He's parking the car. Oh, wait, there he is. I peered over her shoulder and saw a lanky man with a long black beard and matching fedora walking over. He wore a duster despite it being 1,000,000 degrees outside. His fingers were covered in rings. He had on several necklaces and a scarf. He looked like he had come in 3rd place in a Johnny Depp look-alike contest. He lumbered over and nodded at me. Greetings, I am Artemistical de la Rouge at your service. I struggled to not roll my eyes. I looked at Maggie and she shrugged. They call him Art. Hi, Art, I said, trying to suppress a giggle. I'm John. Who is this? Maggie asked, nodding at the neighbor. Dave Mitchell, a squire, he said, shaking her hand. I'm the neighbor. Charmed, Art said, shaking Dave's hand. Should we head inside? Yeah, absolutely, I said, opening the door to invite them in. We got about 3 steps into the foyer before Art came to a halt. Oh, I do not like this. There's something. I need to sit down. Now, I looked over at Maggie, who was worried. I grabbed Art by the arm and led him to a couch. His hand was clammy and there were beads of sweat on his brow. You okay? There is a malevolence here, John. So I've gathered. Do you need anything? Water, Tylenol, proton pack. Water would be amazing. Many thanks, he said with a flourishing hand wave. Many welcomes, I said, walking over to Maggie. Is he okay? I whispered. He's weird, but he's the best. He's in tune with the other side on a level I've never seen before, she said. Is he in tune with our world? She giggled and I remembered how charming I found her laugh. Thanks for reaching out, she said. I know you thought I was crazy or something. No, I interrupted. She kept on trucking, but I was worried something might happen. I'm glad you called. I'm glad you answered. One thing, though, she said, biting her bottom lip. I need to document this on TikTok. I'm not supposed to have anyone over here, I said. What if Marcia finds out? Is this 60-year-old lady an avid TikTok user? I sighed. Fine, do your thing. She smiled. I knew I liked you for a reason. Maggie went off to shoot some footage. I grabbed a bottle of water for Art and handed it to him. He nodded and drank down half the bottle in one gulp. He smacked his lips after and smiled. I feel more whole now, thank you. No problem, I said. Did Maggie tell you anything about this place? Oh yes. The spirit filled in the gaps of the story as soon as I entered. I really wanted to roll my eyes, but fought the urge. What did they say? Demons have replaced the true spirits that used to haunt this land. What? Art leaned forward. Sometimes, demons tap into the energy of a location that experienced a traumatic spiritual event. And do what? They take it over. Gonna be honest, Art, my knowledge of demons is limited to The Exorcist. Why would demons do that? Have you ever heard of zombie snails? No, it's a parasitic worm that infects snails and makes them seem alive even when they've died. Birds eat the zombie snails, and the worm lays eggs in the bird's guts. When the bird dispels its excrement, the cycle continues anew. So, you're saying the ghosts here are actually parasitic demons? Yes, he said, and if we're not careful, they can spread. They might have already. He tipped back the bottle and demolished the other half. It was at that instant that I regretted reaching out to Maggie. She swore Art could help, but he seemed as nutty as a Mound's bar. I had to gracefully move away from Art before he started rambling about another insane theory. I glanced back and saw Dave snapping photos of the artwork on the walls. I walked over to him. I'm not sure you should be taking photos of her artwork. I know, but these are treasures, John. Marcia has some amazing taste. Some of these pieces are priceless, Dave said, marveling at the walls. She's never let us in here before, and I can see why. Half of this stuff belongs in a museum. Is it old? I mean, that's an Alfred Jacob Miller painting, so you tell me. Look at the beauty, the scale. My goodness, I don't know who that is. That? Oh my, it is, Dave said, gushing. This one here is a James Walker painting. It's from his Mexican-American War series. He was famous for battle scenes. Oh, the details. I love Western art. Why hasn't Marcia ever told us about these? Did you say the Mexican-American War? Yes, he covered the war for, sweet Lord above, an apparition, Art yelled from the couch. I snapped around, expecting to see the candle figure, or the screaming woman, but instead, I saw a shadow on the wall. It was Maggie. She waved to Art to calm him down. I was suddenly feeling less confident in my decisions. I looked at the collection of oddballs I had invited into a house that wasn't mine, and sighed. If Marcia was watching, I knew I'd be screwed. While Marcia didn't have any overt security cameras, that didn't rule out hidden ones. Was she watching me now? I felt like a kid attempting their first shoplift. Frayed nerves, feeling eyes on me, and a guilty pang in the pit of my stomach. Hey, I said, turning to the group, maybe we should. There was a rumble under our feet. Earthquake. It was a roller, which felt like you were standing on a sound wave. As it passed under your feet, I braced myself against the wall as the quake roiled. After 30 seconds, the chandeliers were the only things still swaying. You guys okay? I asked. Everyone said yes. I shook my head to try to clear away the cobwebs. I wasn't sure what I should be doing or what was happening. I felt the urge to tell everyone to leave and just go sit alone in the bedroom until Marcia returned. Those thoughts came on as fast as the quake. 1 second I wondered about the distant noise I was hearing. The next, I was wobbling like a newborn calf. Maybe we should. I never finished my thought. The power in the house flickered and then went out. I was annoyed, but that sometimes happens after a quake. At that moment, all of the shades drew closed by themselves. I don't care how big the earthquake is, that never happens. The house was as dark as it had been the other night. What is that? Dave said. I glanced up and saw a light at the end of the hallway near my bedroom door. It was from a candle that was suspended in the air. Dave dropped the phone from his hand, and the candlelight winked out. Something is in the room, Art said, his voice as panicked as ever. Let's not jump to conclusions, I said. Morira's Acqui, a disembodied voice hissed all around us. I don't speak Spanish, Dave said. What did they say? What did they say? The candle suddenly appeared in front of us. It hovered for a second before it plunged to the floor. When it hit, there was a spark, and it disappeared. But the light wasn't gone. Instead of a candle, the words "You will die here" glowed on the carpet. It flickered like candlelight, and then winked out. You could smell the smoke from the wick. Screw this, Dave yelled, sprinting for the front door. He grabbed the handle and tried to wrench the door open, but it wouldn't budge. He started booting the door and screaming, but nothing happened. He was having a full-blown panic attack, and I feared the contagion would infect us all. Dave, relax. We're gonna be okay, I said, trying to get a hold of the situation. No, we're not, Art said. This isn't a mere specter. This is demonic. Oh my god, Maggie said, as she sidled up to me. She was shaking. I found her hand and gave it a reassuring squeeze. I don't mess with demons, she whispered. We don't know if it's demons, I said. Art stood up and made his way toward me. There is a blackness here. It's enveloping all of us. Don't you feel it? No, I said, but then I felt the bottom of my feet start to tingle. Wait, the bottom of my feet are. Mine too, Maggie whispered. What the hell is going on? It's entering our bodies, Dave said, hyperventilating. It's going to eat our souls. It's getting our attention, Art said. It's got it, Maggie said. There was another rumble, and we braced for an aftershock. But it didn't come. The rumbling was some invisible figure stomping down the hallway toward us. They all huddled together and collectively held our breaths. The smell of death came wafting into our nostrils. Whatever this thing was, it was in dire need of a shower. The unseen creature stopped in front of us and started to growl. Maggie's shaking was worse, but she still managed to record what was happening. I remember thinking, damn, I admire the commitment to the job. The creature roared in front of us, and we felt it. As the peak of the roar, the sound dropped away, and every door that led to the backyard flew open. The dark house was suddenly thrown into blinding daylight. We covered our eyes with our hands, trying to adjust without permanently ruining our vision. I pinched the bridge of my nose, opened my eyes, and let them adjust. Through the haze, I saw a figure standing in the doorway before us. At first, I couldn't make it out, but then I heard her scream and knew who it was. My eyes finally started working again. I saw the screaming figure turn away and run into the backyard. I followed behind it. Maggie, still holding my hand, came with me, followed by Art and then, reluctantly, Dave. I could see the backyard paradise in front of me. But as soon as I crossed the door's threshold, the world outside was replaced with a black that made everything around us disappear. We weren't in the backyard anymore, we were in a void. The only other thing here that we could see was the queer house. I looked back and could see the inside of the big house behind us. It was like we stepped into another dimension. That realization shook me to my core. I felt a sudden need to turn and run back into the big house, back into our world, but the door behind us slammed shut. We were trapped in the void. You're the expert, Art. What do we do? I asked. I don't know. This is what happened can't. He continued on in that manner for a few seconds before trailing off. Dave was just whimpering. Maggie was silent and recording, but she never let go of my hand. There was a loud clunk behind the front door of the queer house, like a heavy lock had been released. The door slowly swung open, and the squeaking of the hinges dragged on like an ad movie. I thought someone might walk out. Instead, I saw the cloaked figure holding a candle just inside the house. Next to him was the screaming figure. It looked like a woman, but I couldn't be sure. I remember thinking, where was the woman in the white and yellow dress? They're waiting for you, said a familiar voice behind me. I turned around and was stunned to see Marcia standing in the big house's now open doorway. Marcia, I asked as if my eyes were lying to me. How are you here? Aren't you supposed to be with your mom? My mother died years ago, she said, walking past our group of gawking onlookers. She was murdered and her land stolen from her. What? I said, utterly confused. She grinned at me. There never was a Marcia, John. Zombie snails. Damn, Art was right. As she strode from the big house, the door slammed behind her. I heard dozens of locks snap into place. We were stuck now. This can't be possible, I said. And yet, it is, Marcia said. The years melted off her body with each step she took toward the queer house. She was aging in front of our eyes. Stranger, her whole body changed. Marcia, the older white woman who hired me, was unraveling. Her skin was nothing more than a costume. By the time she stood on the porch of the queer's house, Marcia, as I knew her, was gone. In her place stood a Hispanic woman in her early 20s. Her eyes were red with rage. You're part of the queer family, I said, putting words to all our thoughts. You may have killed our bodies, but you've never been able to destroy our spirit, she hissed. We didn't do anything to you, Dave yelled. No, but you'll pay for what your ancestors did to us just the same. John, what do we do? Maggie whispered into my ear. I didn't have an answer until I felt the rock in my pocket. I wrapped my hand around it and decided I had only one option. I was going to Null and Ryan this thing into Marcia's face. I reared back and hurled the stone as hard as I could. As it left my hand, it felt like the perfect throw. Every mechanic in my arm snapped the way it was supposed to, and the rock felt true as it left my hand. I didn't think it would kill her, but I thought it'd give us time to scramble away. Marcia raised her hand, and the rock stopped midair and fell into the darkness. That's going to cost you, she said with a grin. That's going to cost all of you. As she said that, her form changed again. She grew 3 feet in the blink of an eye. Her arms elongated like coils of cable. Those long ropey arms had blades jut out down her limbs like porcupine quills. Her hands ended in sharp, needle-like points. She unhinged her jaw, and the maw dropped 2 feet. Her teeth grew until they were nothing more than 6-inch razors. They were going to die. If you let me go, I promise I'll give my housekeeper a raise, Dave whimpered. Just then, Art moved in front of us all. Even though he was long and lanky, he looked like a child next to this monster, but his face was resolute and confident. Any doubts he expressed earlier vanished. He looked as transformed as Marcia. You aren't the queer kin, he bellowed. The true queer girl has spoken to me. You are nothing more than a parasite, a lapdog of Beelzebub. I call down the power of God above to strike you down where you stand. Nothing happened. Marcia started laughing. It boomed all around us. I squeezed Maggie's hand, and she squeezed back. I wanted to die knowing someone cared about me. I wanted her to know I cared about her, too. Art raised his hands and uttered something in a tongue I didn't know. A shaft of bright white light came crashing down around Marcia like Zeus had tossed a thunderbolt. She screamed in pain. Art turned to us, his face racked in pain concentration, and yelled, "Run!" I looked back and heard the locks on the door back into the big house unlocking. The door swung open, and I locked eyes with the woman in the white and yellow dress. This was the woman who had warned me to leave. This was an actual ghost of the queer family. My savior, the parasite, had never been able to catch her. I nodded thanks, and Maggie, Dave, and I rushed through the open door. I turned back and yelled for Art, but he was locked in a struggle with the monster. I heard him scream something else in that native tongue, and there was a blast of white light all around them. I was blown back 3 feet and slammed into the nearby wall. Before I could see what had happened, the door slammed shut. The ground under us roiled again, worse than before. This was a big quake. I scrambled towards Maggie and covered her with my body. The entire house shook for what seemed like an eternity. After a minute, I opened my eyes and saw the devastation all around us. The big house had severe structural damage, and we had to leave before we were buried under the rubble. Before I did, though, I had to look in the backyard. I had to see if Art was okay. I stumbled to the door and whipped it open. Everything looked like it had returned to normal. There was no black void, monsters, or mysterious candlelights, just the sprawling gardens. One thing that had changed, though, the Quia house was gone. It was not knocked down or damaged from the quake, but completely removed like it had never been there. Maggie joined me, and we stared at the yard in silence. All around us, emergency vehicles screamed, but in this little oasis, we stayed quiet. After a few, Maggie whispered, "Art, he's not out here." She turned into my shoulder and started to cry. I hugged her and let her sob. I started crying too. This was easily the worst task or job I've ever taken. I decided at that moment it would also be my last. Dave popped out and saw us. He said he was going to go home and wished me luck. I didn't respond. I heard him shut the front door as he left. We heard another rumble and thought it was another aftershock. It wasn't. The big house, weakened by the quake, collapsed in on itself. Maggie and I dashed deeper into the yard to escape the rubble. We left the property not long after. I never got paid, which shouldn't be a surprise. However, I didn't need the money because I had found a new roommate, Maggie. The trauma of the experience had drawn us closer together, and we both realized that our reunion was something special. She called it fate, and I couldn't disagree. She had converted me, finally. We're going strong to this day, though her paranormal investigations have halted for now. I can't blame her. Art hasn't returned, but we still hold out hope that he will. If nothing else, we owe him our gratitude for saving our lives. I have no clue what happened to him, or what power he called or anything. I'm not sure I want to know. Whoever said ignorance is bliss must have lived through a traumatic experience. Marcia's body was never found. She was one of the countless dead lost to the quake. With no surviving kin, her property is up for sale. In this market, someone will snap it up quickly. I hope they retain nothing from the old house save for the guardian angel that patrols those grounds. Other than her, burn that place to the ground and start fresh. A few days later, Maggie and I were lounging on the couch when she remembered she had taken footage of the whole encounter. She had forgotten she had recorded anything in the hubbub of the quake, the haunting, and Art going missing. She pulled up the video files, and every single one was nothing but a silent black screen, except for one. In the last video, right before it ends, there's a crackle and someone whispers a phrase. There's heavy distortion and audio noise, but you can hear a voice speaking. Maggie thinks the person is saying, "Don't forget me, you can get me." I'm not that optimistic. What I hear is something a bit more sinister. The door is open. We'll get you. Night 1. Mom. My eyes darted open to see him, blanket in hand. His fingers were precariously clutching the ridges, pulling at the seams of the edges. Light infiltrated the room only from the cracked door from which he had only briefly emerged. "Yes, honey." Instinctively, I flicked on a light, checking the clock. 2:49. Something had obviously spooked him. He was bouncing indecisively, a look of shame across his face. He seemed upset. "There's a man on the TV." I stepped over building blocks and action figures as he guided me to the television his father had recently put in his room. It was sitting on top of the dresser, a heavy compounding piece of metal. As we approached, our distorted reflections grew in size. My teeth clenched at the sight. For the past year he had been begging and begging, saying he wanted to watch Disney Channel so he could talk about it at school with the other kids who had cable. My concerns had lied with whatever channels he could stumble upon. He was just so young, my mind raced to think of what all he could possibly be exposed to. His father didn't seem to think it was an issue, so he bought him one for Christmas. I found out the very morning my son did, so what if he accidentally sees some boobs on HBO? He patted my back before going to help him get it set up in his room, each touch radiating through me a little too much. Each pat echoed with a hollow thump. It would have turned into a fight, so I just let it go. I didn't want to make it a fight, not on Christmas. That's what I told myself at least. I didn't want to wake you. I didn't want you to get mad. My son stood behind me consistently watching my feet take the first steps into his room. A red standby light in the corner of the television signaled it was off, the maroon glow soaking everything. My hands reached for a warm lamp, uncomfortable with the way things looked. What do you mean there was a man on the TV? You mean on the TV, right? No, honey, I think you just forgot to turn it off before you went to bed. No, the TV was off. Can you take it out of my room? Okay, so the TV was off. He must have had a nightmare, I figured. However, this was a big block of metal and electronics. Its weight was like cinder blocks. I wouldn't be able to move it by myself, not without making more noise and waking up his father, and I'm sick of arguing. What exactly did you see? A man. What kind of man? His vagueness wasn't helping. I couldn't help him if he hid what was going on. A TV man. As my teeth continued to grind, my anger moved away from him. How could I have been mad? The kid is scared to death. Even if we were going in circles, his father shouldn't have put it in his room. I had said this would happen, yet I am the one handling it, like I always do. My hands had been grazing the screen. A soft tingle of electricity made the arms on my hand stand up. The high-frequency hum is barely intelligible to my adult ears. This would have annoyed me in the master bedroom. How anyone could sleep with this constant distraction was beyond me. What did he look like? I don't know, kind of like a clown, but he wasn't a clown. He had this piece of hair that fell on his face, but he was on my TV. Okay, so this was definitely a nightmare. I was thinking, and it probably was from something he saw before bed. Dreams manifest themselves like that, but he doesn't understand. As I got older, I could recognize that all dreams are just a collection of thoughts your brain doesn't know what to do with, so it organizes them like files in a cabinet while you sleep. It's one of those things that makes sense when you get it explained to you like that. They aren't premonitions or warnings or signs from God, they're neurons. He wouldn't know what a neuron is though, he's 6. Just like how a television is just wires and surges of electricity, sparks that coalesce in a picture on a screen, and that annoying hum. It makes my ears hurt, even from the one in the living room. To think of how multiple rooms in this house were tainted with that hum. I got on my knees. Honey, I'm certain this was just a nightmare or something. It's not real. The TV is off. You said you turned it off before you went to bed. Nothing can come on the TV if it's off. Think about it. I guess that makes sense. Can we unplug it though? Whatever is going to fix this. Sure, I'm not going to fight with him. Yes, I say without much emotion. He got back in his bed. As I pulled up the covers, I kissed his forehead and turned the light back out. As the red glow of the standby light illuminated him, I yanked the cord out of the wall. Pitch black now. I should buy him a nightlight. Maybe that would fix it. I have nightmares. That night too, ones I hadn't had since I was very young. Night 2, I felt a nudge. It gently awakened me as I looked to see him standing over my bed again. Yeah, what is it, sweetie? It happened again. Warm milk was soon hitting his favorite mug. I had thought it was warm at least, but he told me it's cold. My son sat on the couch unsure of what to make of the television in the living room. It was playing some old Western movie they only play early in the morning, unseen by most anyone. I wouldn't have been surprised if we were the only viewers. I moved to sit beside him, an awkward distance between us. I should move closer, but I don't. Honey, what's gotten you so shaken up? Nothing, his eyes glossy. As they are watching the TV, I grabbed the remote and turned it off. You know it's a nightmare, right? He shakes his head affirmatively in response as I tussle his hair. He was clearly bothered by something. He wouldn't have a nightmare twice in a row for no reason. I wouldn't. I racked my brain trying to think of all the things he would not be telling me. He's probably getting bullied. He hadn't been in school for very long. He only started about a year ago. I didn't remember much from being that age, but I could only imagine how scary it is to finally leave the safety of your parents to go be in a room of strangers, to be by yourself for the very first time. The isolation of a crowd. Other kids can be mean, Not that my son was frail or anything. His father would make sure he wasn't. Yet, he definitely hasn't experienced much hardship before now. Any little thing might be setting him off. How is school going? It's okay. He trailed off, not giving it much thought. I know what's really going on. It's obvious. Hey, you know you can tell me anything, right? I'm not going to get upset or mad or I told you about the TV man last night and you didn't believe me. He showed up again. I wasn't really sure what to say here. It's hard to slowly introduce the reality of the world to a 6-year-old. He still believes in Santa. I'm not going to destroy all the magic of being young tonight, but how do I explain certain things that are just impossible? Sometimes things just can't happen. It was a nightmare. It's not that I didn't believe you. I tried to rationalize. I was just trying to explain what you saw. I saw a man in your dream. You saw a man in your dream. I approached my next point very carefully. Are you getting picked on at school? I prodded. No, I have a lot of friends, like Carly or Jenna or Matthew. Or, what do you and your friends do at school? I wonder if he had misinterpreted bullying for friendship. They could have been tricking him with occasional sincerity. He was already more gullible than other kids. He believed his nightmares were real. If they were making fun of him, and he didn't have a frame of reference for someone who actually cares, how could he ever know the difference? He was naive. I didn't blame him. He was just young. We sit at lunch together and talk about what? I expected him to say something off color. They were probably calling him a girl or pushing him around. I get to the bottom of it. Robots and stuff. Disney Channel. Oh, maybe they were just his friends. The TV man wants to be my friend too, he said. He wants to be your friend. I patted his back until my fingers suddenly recoiled, but I wasn't sure why. Was I comforting him, or was I being dismissive? I was comforting him. Yeah, honey, we unplugged the TV. How could anything appear on the TV if it was unplugged? Things that need to be plugged in don't work when they aren't. I had a feeling this tactic isn't going to work again. It was a band-aid solution before. It would be a band-aid solution then too. Well, it was off yesterday too, and it happened. He finished his milk and laid back down on the couch. I want to sleep here. The living room freaked me out. Our back wall is mostly windows with a screen door. I can see nothing outside. It's an abyss. I try to rationalize that by thinking of how many people live close by. It was supposed to be a safe neighborhood, one of the safest in the area. That's what his father proclaimed. I would never be able to sleep down there. What if someone were to walk up and knock on the window while I was sleeping? Someone I didn't know. Now that's what I have nightmares about. Things that could actually happen. A tangible threat. Not that it would, but some freak could decide to prey on this house and look through one of those windows in the middle of the night. I'm not gonna tell him that though. I understand that's irrational, even though that's something that could actually happen. It's a safe neighborhood, right? Would sleeping here make you feel better? Did this not freak him out too? How did I not understand my child? I think so. I bring his blanket down and tuck him into a little corner of the couch. Whatever works. As I walked back up the stairs, I felt disoriented, almost losing my footing on multiple instances. All the shadows projected from various windows illuminate the stairway. Everything is so quiet. In the dead of night, every corner was shrouded in a blob of darkness. I wondered how easy it would be for someone to hide in a corner unseen. Then the blob moved. I turned the light on. Everything is too bright for a moment. Then as my eyes adjust, I realize all the shadows were just that. Shadows. I was giggling. I was so stupid. No one is going to hurt me. Not again. There was a picture of me and my father on the stairwell. I turned it face down. I turned the lights back off as my son asked, "What was going on?" "It's nothing, just checking." Nothing was in any of the corners, just cabinets and bookshelves and potted plants, various furniture uninhabited. I looked at the security alarm. Armed. Good. Nothing is getting him without the entire house knowing. He owned a gun somewhere. As much as I hate them, it did give me some comfort then. Besides, other people were in the house. My husband would protect us if someone were to break in, or I could defend myself. I could hold my own if I had to. I had the ability to protect myself. I repeat that like a mantra until I fall back asleep. I didn't fall back asleep. Night 3. Mom, I had the nightmare again. I was up. My patience was thoroughly tested. At least he knows what it is now. A nightmare, the rational explanation. Does anything else happen in the nightmare? A man walks on screen. And then what? He just talks to me. He says he doesn't know how to get out. Get out of what? The TV. I really hated this thing. I didn't want it for him. He's too young. We still haven't moved it out of his room. I mentioned it to his father yesterday morning. He said to just leave it. He can't face his fears otherwise. It was a TV. It can't hurt him. It was the new millennium. We survived Y2K. He said, saying if he threw out the computer last year, and then when nothing happened, we would have been stupid. And out of a computer, we wouldn't have learned anything. He wanted it. We're gonna leave it. It happens at 2:30 every night. My son was elaborating, but it was nonsensical. I don't know why I even asked. I looked out his window, my attention drawn to the cars parked on the road. I don't recognize one of them. It's a safe neighborhood, though. What would stop someone from driving up and breaking into my house? What are the chances of that? What does safe neighborhood even mean? I was about to wake up his father to check it out. Then I stopped. He would write it off. He'd be mad, like how he gets when he is tired. It will turn into a fight tomorrow, and I just can't keep getting swept away in this false reality I've started to believe in, or so I was told earlier that night. I'm sick of how redundant this week has been. How many times would he wake me up because of a nightmare? If he doesn't get through one night without getting scared, what does that mean? We should look into a therapist. But at this point, I'm wondering if any of this can be solved through therapy. Mike's a pro, so loft. Something can fix this, because I clearly can't. Despite my greatest efforts at reassuring him he wouldn't quit, and he probably won't quit until the TV comes out of his room. But then what lesson is learned? That fear wins. I started to sound like his father. He must have seen something on the TV those first few days he had it. That has to be what it is, or else someone is actually talking to him on the TV, which they aren't. Maybe he was schizophrenic, or is hallucinating somehow. Becoming a mom, I had never considered our son would be any different than the average. Was he mentally ill? At the very least, it's some kind of anxiety disorder. Was it my fault? Are the genetics of abuse something passed down? I took a deep breath. From my brief time in therapy, I knew it was easy for things to escalate. When you're anxious, sometimes things seem worse than they are. You are asked to look at the odds of something happening. I try to reframe it for him. Okay, let's look at the odds of what you are saying. He nodded. What are the odds that there is a man in your TV? I don't know what odds are. Then why did you not? It doesn't matter. It means the chances of something happening. So let's look at the odds of a man being in a TV. I'm gonna say 1 in a million. Now let's say that happens to be your TV. That's like another 1 in a million. But he is in my television. But the odds of that are so low. But he is in my television. I didn't know what to do. Maybe his father would, in the morning. Night 4. Them. I was startled. It was him again, obviously. I fully expected it. Hair sticking up in a way that looks like knives. In silhouette. He talked to me again. I sat in his room, watching him wave his arms around in an effort to explain the situation. He's so full of energy, despite the time. The TV sits there. My husband tried booking an appointment with a doctor on the other side of town. Franklin's family pediatric psychotherapy. We can't get until next week. Another thing, I will have to take care of myself. He leaves for a business trip today. He said to wake him next time this happens. I don't want to. I feel like he'll be mad. Too mad for our son to handle. The man said he liked me. My son was hysterical. Untired. Okay. Honey, I know you are scared. But we talked about this. It's not real. There isn't a man on the TV. It's not on. This is the 4th night in a row. He was on earlier. Stop. My voice raised higher. Then I meant for it too. He flinched. My son had never flinched before, not at me at least. I didn't want to wake you again. I was scared you would get mad. I'm not mad. You just aren't listening. My voice was way higher than before. Why did it get louder and not softer? I wanted it to be softer. I was yelling, and I wasn't trying to. Why was I yelling? You can't keep waking me up. I told you it was a nightmare. Last night you even told me it was a bad dream. I thought you understood. Fake things can't hurt you. Stop making up fake things. Tell me how a man would come on the TV if the TV is off. How would a man step on the screen? Can you tell me? I screamed. It was louder than the tornado sirens that would blare during fall. He clammed up, and tears filled his eyes. I regretted it immediately. I just couldn't do it anymore. I can't keep waking up in the middle of the night. I can't keep doing this until next week, when we can see a therapist. Even then, who knows how long this will take after that. Nothing is going to hurt you. The alarm has been armed this entire week. If anyone is going to break in, it would go off. The only way we wouldn't know is if someone was in the house already, and the only one in here right now is you, your father, and me. I'm still going off. Why am I still going off? I don't want the TV anymore. Please just take it back. He was crying. I will in the morning, I whispered. I left the room and wiped away any sign of emotion from my eyes. I don't know how or why it got away from me. I wasn't mad, so why did I yell? I chalk it up to some kind of adrenaline rush. There is always a rational explanation. I wouldn't yell if I didn't mean it, and I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. I look behind to see him crying into a pillow. I should apologize. I don't. As I walk back to my nightstand, I see the orange bottle. I grab one of the tablets. I swallow. Night 5. The CRT sits in the corner of the room. I haven't fallen asleep. It's reflecting the entire bedroom, curving the image at the corners. It doesn't give me comfort. It's letting me see too much. We're going to move it to the garage tomorrow. His father said he could have it when he learned to stop being scared of things that aren't real, that returning it was a waste, when he will want it back again within a week. He left for a business trip yesterday. The thumping of his briefcase, as it had carelessly collided with furniture, radiated through the house then. He was in a rush. Now, it was just me. Before he left, he said he would move it into our room so we could use it if he won't. I've had recurrent nightmares before, things like being on a plane and it crashing or being gunned down. Stupid shit. I never had them every night for 4 days. I had brought up, maybe, if we should take him to therapy or talk to the school guidance counselor or something. Something must be wrong, some kind of chemical imbalance. I don't know. My husband wrote it off as him being scared of nothing. That medicine doesn't fix being a baby, because that's all our son was, a baby. He doesn't know I'm medicated. I never told him about my father or how his bouts of anger left holes in the drywall of my childhood home. I figured it was easier to just hide that away in a box that would never be opened, as long as I kept taking those tablets. I wished the TV was covered. It was a black screen staring at me, eyes without a face. What the hell did he see? What could he have seen on the news, or HBO, or the History Channel that spooked him this bad? My legs were restless, and I was kicking the blanket, trying to reposition it in ways I thought would be more comfortable. It was for a moment, then I kick it around again. Having to stare at myself in the reflection of the screen isn't helping. I hated it. The alarm said it was 2:29. In 1 minute it would be 2:30. I think I had freaked myself out. What a creepy thing for my son to say, that every night at 2:30 a man on TV would talk to him. I was hoping to have fallen asleep before now, scared at what would possibly happen if I was awake. If I was asleep, nothing could hurt me, or if it did, I wouldn't know. Being asleep seemed to solve most problems, yet I hadn't been able to get much of any this week. I think part of me wanted to know once and for all if I would hear anything or see anything, yet I knew I wouldn't. The TV was off. It was physically impossible for anything to come on screen. The ceiling fan turned. At least my son hasn't come into the room yet. Maybe he won't tonight. Was it really as simple as taking the TV out of his room? I looked at the television. What is it about you? The clock turned to 2:30. Nothing happens. Of course nothing would. To believe I had ever thought something might have. And so dumb. All illusions had been shattered, and with newfound confidence I got up to plug the TV back in so I could watch something. It's just a television. A damn television set. Harmless. I was crazy. I had always been crazy. As I approached, something changed. A leg stepped in from the edge of the frame. I looked over, thinking it must have been a reflection from the door. It wasn't. My eyes darted to the cord. They followed it to an outlet. There was no contact between the plug and the wall. The TV wasn't on. It physically couldn't be. A man walked on the screen of the TV, wearing overalls and a flannel shirt underneath. He held a hammer, his face white as paper. He looked around as if he was lost, taking a moment to go back deeper, getting smaller as he walked away, and then he got closer. He got closer. It looked like he was tapping on the glass. Everything besides him was still black. All the pixels that made up the screen were off. "Where's Noah?" He sounded muffled. I wanted to scream, but as my mouth opened, nothing came out. I was hallucinating, or dreaming, or having a psychotic break. I wanted to tell him I found this hammer. I can come out of the TV now. It swung towards the screen, and it shattered. I'm screaming my head off, scared to death of what's about to happen. Who is this man? What does he want? I run to grab Noah, slamming the door behind me. It doesn't help much as a hammer breaks the door down. I have the ability to protect myself. I run and I grab Noah, taking him into my arms. As we haul our asses down the stairs, the man standing at the top, he's giving chase, but it won't hurt Noah. No one will hurt Noah. I won't let anything hurt him. Scramble through kitchen cabinets. I find a lockbox. Inside is a small pistol my husband bought. He said I was never allowed to use it, that I might hurt myself in more than one way. I grab it and load it. Noah is cowering behind me. Cover, I started to yell at him. I stopped. I say it again, strong but firm. Cover your ears. The TV man approached gently, alarmingly deceptive. I just want to be friends with Noah. A charming voice sounds as he steps down the stairs. The hammer barely being held by his hand, it clangs and crashes. As it hits each step, the thumps are hollow and sickening. I put my finger on the trigger as the TV man reaches the bottom step. If you take one more step, I swear to God I will shoot. Do not test me. I'm shaking. I really don't know if I have the ability to shoot this thing. Is it even human? Why would you shoot me? I just want to be Noah's friend. He swings the hammer upwards. I have the ability to protect myself. I have the ability to protect what matters to me. I shoot. The man falls over as I grab Noah and take him into my arms. All of us texted it. My brother, June, his wife, May, our cousins, Clara and Phil, and their partners, and me, the only single among the couples at our backyard barbecue. I was turning the dogs on the grill when June brought it up, claiming to have overheard some of the tech bros at work discussing it. You just text, "What is my death date?" and it'll tell you when you're going to die. No way, gasped cousin Clara. You're kidding me. Creepy. May rubbed her arms and shivered. BS. I called. June's been a champion liar since we were little. When he met May, the two hit it off like firecrackers, each trying to one-up the other with their shenanigans. Pranks that ran from the harmless, like May making caramel onions instead of apples, to the elaborate, like the week I found roaches all over my apartment, even falling on me from the shower head. June sniffed out a receipt for plastic roaches on May's credit card and convinced me to get her back with a live centipede, which I put in a cup and handed to her. Not until she screamed and flung the centipede back at me did June's maniacal cackling finally clue me in that he played us both. So, this death date business. Yeah, classic June BS. He was showing off his phone screen. His death date was tomorrow. In rapid succession, the others all texted the number, so I went ahead and joined. We compared responses. Mine, 9:49 p.m. May 15, 2023. Clara, 11:16 a.m. June 5, 2040. Howie, 1:19 p.m. March 11, 2027. Phil, 6:44 a.m. October 3, 2063. Isra, 7:53 p.m. November 7, 2029. May, 9:45 p.m. June 11, 2023. June, 10:53 a.m. May 12, 2023. Tomorrow was June's, coincidentally on his birthday. May and Clara were freaking out. They kept asking, was he scared? Wasn't he worried? Phil jokingly suggested he should lock himself up indoors and make sure to not go out anywhere, etc. Of course, June made a big production of it, texting updates all through the morning of his birthday. And then, after 10:53 a.m., nothing. June's texts just stopped. It was, of course, all completely staged, just as cousin Clara dragged in our parents, who then called me and insisted I go check on my brother, and honey, we know it's just June being June, but go make sure. He finally sent a video thanking everyone for the birthday wishes and exclaiming about how he'd see us all soon to celebrate his birth, not his death, and also how he'd gotten messages from mom and dad and so many people, and how funny it spread so far, even his boss had called. Sometimes I wanted to strangle my little brother. So anyway, we all agreed later at his birthday party that no one was fooled and asked who were we actually texting. Turned out we'd been texting Aisha, a girl he'd met and was planning to set me up with. So I added the number to my contacts and then messaged her, me, hey, death date girl, Aisha, right? So my little bro dragged you into one of his evil schemes. Aisha, 9:49 p.m. May 15th, 2023. Lol, good one, but he already came clean. Aisha, 9:49 p.m. May 15th, 2023. I frowned as I noticed something that I hadn't the first time around. I showed the group my phone. Guys, I don't think this is Aisha. General scoffs all around, because of course they thought I was kidding. But then I opened the contact so they could see the number. Turns out I'd been one digit off this whole time. Everyone else had been messaging Aisha and getting made up death dates from her. But I'd messaged someone else. When they realized this, the group sobered up. Well, who did you text then? June snatched my phone, eyes bright with curiosity. I have no idea. Asked them who they are, suggested cousin Clara. So I did. Again, the same response. 9:49 p.m. May 15th, 2023. Whoa, let me try. May tapped the mystery number into her phone and whizzed off a text, and almost immediately a bell chimed with a response. 12:33 a.m. May 15th, 2023. Oh my god, you guys. Chills, squealed Clara. That is creepy. May I, June? That's how you do a death date prank. Did you set this up? June asked her. No, I swear. Alright, that's enough death dates, declared our dad. He and mom could only suffer so much of our antics. The conversation was dropped. As I was heading back home later, June approached me. He seemed annoyed, convinced either I or someone else was copying his idea, which he claimed wasn't funny since he'd already done it. Apparently, he really wanted to know who was behind it. I told him I had no clue, but just as asking set a cold pin of anxiety in my brain. After all, if it wasn't someone in our family group, whose number was that? Imagining some stranger texting back sent icy fingers tracing the flesh of my neck. June grumbled that it was probably May, then smiled and encouraged me to give Aisha a ring. Try to be cool, he said, and less of a stick in the mud. I think the word you're looking for is responsible, I suggested. Serious, mature, all synonyms for boring. I flipped him the bird, and then I forgot about the whole death date thing for a few days. I didn't even remember it until today when I went to message Aisha and got that same response. Aisha, 9:49 p.m. May 15th, 2023. Damn, I'd forgotten to delete the death date number from my contacts after putting her name in. I did so now. I was about to message the real Aisha when curiosity brought me back to the death date number again, now just coming up as unknown on my phone. I messaged, me, who is this? Unknown, 9:49 p.m. May 15th, 2023. Me, May, unknown, 9:49 p.m. May 15th, 2023. Screw it. I borrowed a coworker's phone, asking if I could send a quick text since mine was dead, and I sent to the same number the original question again. Me, when is my death date? Unknown, 9:49 p.m. May 15th, 2023. The hairs on the back of my neck prickled. How the hell had this number responded with the same exact date and time to a completely different phone? The sudden icy grip of fear was impossible to ignore. I called June, but it went to voicemail. Moments later, my phone buzzed. June, work. I sent a rapid series of texts explaining. June, 1 sec. June, I got 9:42 p.m. May 15th, 2023. June, probably May. June, lol. A few hours later, June met me at my townhouse. He told me flatly that he couldn't figure out who owned the number, and it struck me that, given he works at a tech company, he'd probably tried all sorts of tricks to track it down. Annoying as he could be, he's incredibly smart. The fact he hadn't figured out where it came from made the knot in my gut tighten. A horrible dread settled over me. I'm sure it's just May. She's been out all day and hasn't been responding to any of my texts. Bet she set this whole thing up to freak us out. June spoke casually, rolling his eyes. He didn't like to admit when something got under his skin, ever. But having grown up with him, I could spot it in the tension around his eyes, the way his smile didn't reach them. I called May's phone, straight to voicemail. She's at a show with Clara and her mom, June said. Been going on about it all week. No coincidence the show ends just a half hour before our death date. Give her enough time to rush over here to scare us. It's part of this whole thing. Trust me, she'll be here soon. And then he grinned, pointing at my laptop. You're typing this all up. I started typing earlier this afternoon, documenting in case, well, just in case. That's great. I know some people you can send it to, you know, make it viral. Zero interest, I said. He rolled his eyes. It's like you don't even want a girlfriend. 9:39, still no answer from May. Suddenly, my phone vibrated. June always kept his on silent, but his eyes darted to it when the screen lit up. He blinked, showed it to me. We both had the same text. Unknown, knock knock. Downstairs, from the front door of the townhome, came knocking. June jumped. Oh, he nodded. May's good. I take it back. She's giving us a good scare. I was too freaked out to say anything. I just really hoped it was May. June shouted, May, is that you? There was tension in his frame as he called again. Then he put his phone to his ear and snickered. I heard it too, a tinkling sound of bells from somewhere just outside the front door, May's ringtone. She was outside. June pulled the phone from his ear and called out, Caught you, May. We know it's you. He smirked at me. Be back in a sec, he said, and hurried down. My phone buzzed again. Knock knock. From downstairs, the click of the front door latch. I looked at the time on my phone. 9:41. June's time was almost up. May really did plan it all perfectly so she could arrive right when he was supposed to meet his end. I heard June calling out the front door for May, probably hiding somewhere to pounce on him. A moment later, I heard the scuff of him putting his shoes on and stepping outside. My phone buzzed. June, be back in a sec. I was about to close the browser, this browser, with the window open to the account I'd been documenting of all this, when my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't June or the unknown number. It was cousin Clara. Clara. Hey, have you heard from May? Me? Yeah. Why? Clara. Oh, thank goodness. She was supposed to meet me and Mom. The big show. We got really worried. All our calls went to voicemail. Can you ask her why she didn't come? The show. June had mentioned the show, too. And now I remembered May talking about that show at the barbecue. How she'd spent weeks trying to get those tickets. And she'd missed it. A sudden sickness twisted in my stomach. The dread dialing up from a tingle to a horrid lurch like the floor had just been ripped out from under me. I hollered, June, did you find her? My phone buzzed. June, knock knock. The rapping on the door was so loud I jumped. It wasn't down the steps at the front of the building, but right outside my living room door. I hadn't heard any footsteps come up the stairs. Hello, I said. Let us in. Called June. Relief flooded me at the sound of his voice. I got up from my laptop and reached for the knob. I don't know why I hesitated. Suddenly, the feeling of dread was like a noose being pulled around my neck, cutting off the air. A warning, some primitive instinct. Why hadn't there been footsteps? I called June's phone. It rang for a while, then went to voicemail. Why aren't you answering your phone? I asked. Silence, then June's voice, near enough that it was clear there was only the wooden door between us, because I'm right outside the door. How do I know it's you? His refusal to answer his phone stuck in my mind like a chicken bone caught in my throat. The explosion of my phone's ringtone made me jump. I picked up the call, and June's voice said into my ear, Happy now? Yes, I said, relieved. Knock knock, he said, and I could almost hear his smile. Let us in. No, bro. June sounded annoyed. My phone buzzed. June, frowny face. I quickly tapped back. Me, after 9:50 p.m. June, frowny face. He knocked on the door. Let us in. He added, You're being ridiculous. Bro, he banged on the door. Just open the door. It's us. Where's May? I shot back. A long pause. Still no rustling or footsteps or any other human sounds. Then May's sing-song voice opened the door. In 5 minutes, I said. It was 9:45. You seriously want us to just stand here in your hallway for 5 minutes? Snapped June. Come on, let us in. Chimed May. Let us in. Thundered June. But the more they demanded I open the door, the more my pulse raced, and my hands slicked with sweat. Why did it matter so much? What was 5 minutes? Sometimes with siblings, you get in these power struggles. That was what this felt like. Like maybe it was just June trying to make me do things his way, annoyed with me trying to control him. Only I wasn't trying to control him or May. I was genuinely afraid, and I refused to open that door. The shouting and pleading continued, and my phone suddenly began vibrating so much that I had to snatch it up to prevent it falling off the desk. The texts were coming nonstop as the door kept rattling. Knock knock. At 9:49 p.m., the sound suddenly ceased. I waited several minutes, frozen in terror, and finally went to the door, hands trembling. wrapped my fingers around the knob, opened it. There was nobody in the hallway, only a few dirty tracks. Strange. June always removed his shoes before coming up. The front door was wide open, a cool breeze blowing in. I wandered down and peeked outside, then closed it. Maybe they were in it together. Maybe they were pulling some elaborate prank, like with the cockroaches. I went back upstairs and called June's phone again, hoping he'd pick up, but there was no answer. I called and called. Nothing. I was just about to go out and look for him again when I noticed something face down on the sofa. June's phone. He must have left it in my living room. When he went down to get May, I picked it up and saw my missed calls, as well as a bunch of texts from Clara asking about May and the show. He knew May was missing before he arrived. That explained why he was so tense, but he didn't want to admit it, thinking she was just one-upping him on his prank. That also explained why he'd been so relieved, in such a hurry to go meet her when he'd heard her ringtone. I also checked his text history. None of his knock-knock messages after he left came from this phone. It's now near 10:30 according to the analog clock on my bookshelf, and I'm freaked out because my phone and laptop are both frozen at 9:49 p.m. and have been for the past half hour. I tried calling Mom, tried calling Dad or Cousin Claire or anybody, but the line is busy. No matter who I ring, it's busy. And my laptop, like all the frozen technology, isn't working. Luckily, I can still type in the window that's already open, so that's what I've been doing, documenting, praying I'll be able to post this and get help. My phone just buzzed. June, knock knock, and now the phone slips out of my fingers, and icy claws rake down my spine, because the knocking came from inside the room. And suddenly I remember how I peeked out the door earlier, before I realized the clocks were frozen. Words are now flashing across my laptop on their own as fast as I can think them. Let me finish typing for you as June's voice chuckles like he always did when he landed a really good prank, back when he was alive, and he whispers right in my ear, "Hey, thanks for letting me in." During the recession of the early 80s, employment was hard to find. I was a maintenance man with a great work ethic due to my military background, but most employers turned me away. I did not have an engineering degree, though I was better than most who built things for a living. One day I went to a bar on the Nevada side. Believe it or not, that was how people networked in those days. When they wanted to find a source of income, I was already living out of a van. I survived on PB&J sandwiches and ramen noodles. I walked into that tap house and struck up a conversation with a man named Gillen. He had sat next to me. He was well dressed in a pressed suit and almost seemed out of place in such a dive. The dust mites and the rays of sunlight settled on the counter between us as he sipped his highball. He looked like a biker from an action movie. He said, "I'm a handyman searching for a job." I said, "If you know anyone hiring, I'd love to interview. What can you do?" Gillen asked. I did not want to sound like a braggart, but I responded in full by notifying him there was little I was incapable of. I could perform cleaning, light repairs, landscaping, carpentry, and fix appliances. A wrench is a natural extension of my body, I said. I'm installing a fence around my property, he said, as he finished a gin and tonic. The contractors I've talked to want to destroy my wallet. Do you think we could work something out? I'd rather give money to a stand-up guy like you than some of these con artists claiming to be something they're not. Yes, I said. I proceeded to ask him how many feet of wire he needed. I told him off the top of my head how much the cost would be when he responded that it would be thousands of pounds worth. I reasoned his estate must be massive. He also emphasized that he wanted barbed wire. I should have found that detail alarming, but did not think much of it in the moment. When can I look at the place? I asked. Tonight, he said as he shoved the tumbler towards the server. Hell, right now. We went out to the parking lot. An Audi was awaiting us, the headlights already turned on. A man in a suit sat behind the wheel. I could not fathom having a chauffeur. What do you do for a living? I said after we settled in the back seat. I could not hide my curiosity anymore. I'm a biologist, he said. Not at a stuffy university, either. I operate my own lab. We do important research. How far away is your place? Only a few miles. Something you should know. There's an entire wing of my property under renovation. It would make me happy if your services are available to work on it as well. How long do you plan on staying here? Till I die if you pay me well enough, I said. He laughed at that as we approached the manor. The gates opened. We followed a winding concrete pathway surrounded by a dewy green grass. Their blades glistened in the moonlight. He walked me up to the top level and patted me on the back. If you give me your car keys, he said, I can have my driver go to your vehicle and collect your tools. The construction zone is yours to stay in if you think you can be comfortable there. I had told him earlier that I was new to town. I did not expect him to be so welcoming. I had to keep in mind he was still intoxicated, and I thought I should take his kindness for granted. It was not a daily opportunity to stay in such a luxurious place. After all, it would be the most torn apart section of it, but I had to take it. I'd be grateful for that, I said as I handed him my key. Please have him bring my backpack as well. There's a sleeping bag and paperback novel in there. He gave it to his employee, and within half an hour I found a corner to shack up in. He did not know that he had, within 5 hours of meeting me, welcomed a criminal into his house. Granted, I was not an evil one. I like to think of myself as having a better moral compass than the average lawbreaker. I robbed a bank in Paso Robles after my wife got sick. Not only did a few witnesses give the authorities my description, I was behind bars when she passed away. That was not for him to know, though. I knew if I told him he would assume I was a malicious and unrepentant thief. Better to keep it quiet. I curled up underneath my blanket. Sawdust surrounded me and a breeze came over the Sierra Nevada mountains. In the distance, the room I was in was a work in progress, since there were no walls, only beams and rows of grimy floorboards. The level looked out at the gardens and the park next to the house. I was grateful to not have to sleep in the cramped space of my Ford. I had one goal. I had to show him I was valuable, and he would let me stay here until the projects were complete. I awoke around midnight, parched from the few beers I had drank at the establishment earlier. I walked near the stairs to head to the kitchen, and a verdant luminescence caught my eye. I looked down at the forested pastures. 2 men sat across from each other over some kind of board game. The board, which I presumed to be chess, glowed a neon green between them. One of them turned and peered up at me. The gaunt look he possessed made a shadow appear around his eyes, and I could not make out their color. I turned around and tried to go back to sleep. The next night, a bout of insomnia overcame me. I had spent the day hanging drywall after hours of fastening bottom and top plates. How tiredness had not gotten to me was a mystery. I tried every trick I knew to get back into a slumber. I tried breathing techniques and meditations from psychology books I found in prison. Nothing seemed to work. I tried to get lost in my paperback, a collection by Richard Matheson, and all it did was captivate me. I looked out to see if those men would be there continuing their competitive match. I did not understand the hours they kept, and a part of me wondered if they were casing the area to burglarize it. If my negative suspicions were true, that had to be the strangest front ever put up by a potential home invader. As I scanned the wilderness, what I saw next stunned me. 2 women sat down next to each other in a thicket of trees. Both of them appeared to be in their mid-30s. Their faces were visible, but they wore yellow hazmat suits. I crawled to the edge of the flooring to get a better view of them. Their choice of clothing concerned me. That was when a man leapt out from behind one of the pines and chased after them. Even from my vantage point, he was huge, very lanky, and towering. My instincts kicked in. I went downstairs and ran into the woodland in pursuit to help. This was a foolish maneuver from the standpoint of self-preservation, but I had to. Leaves crunched under my feet as I made my way deeper into the outgrowth. The screwdriver and box cutter were in my pockets. They would be the only weapons besides my grappling should an act of violence occur. A rabbit hopped by. It stopped to look at me before it moved behind a log. I saw a skull drawn on its fur in black marker. I observed a clearing in the distance and heard a masculine voice. I inched closer. Something crawled in the trees above me. The sound of something sharp scraping on wood floated. Although not a religious person, I prayed it was a mountain lion. I continued to follow the chatter and saw the same 2 men moving their pieces on the chessboard. One was the bully who had driven the women away from their peaceful spot. What struck me as odd was how gigantic both individuals were. I was 5'9", but these men had to be tall enough to puncture most ceilings, at least 6'7". Both had blanched faces. I crept behind a bush and watched as one of them boasted in the victory of the match. What they wore was even stranger than the wardrobe of the women I had seen earlier. They both had leather long coats. Wires and patches hung from their exposed chest, as though they had both escaped from a hospital. One looked in my direction. I knew the obscurity and terrain would cloak me, but him hunting for me out of pure alarm caused a memory to well up. I was in the jungle as I tossed white phosphorus smoke grenades between bamboo stalks. I hoped the bullets flying around me would not connect. I shook my head and came back to the present moment. Now was the time to remain focused. I kept low and made my way back to Gillen's house. I was unsure of what had happened to the females, but relieved to have returned to my new home. The moonlight seemed brighter when I went to rest. The light of it washed over me. I was unable to do anything but stare out at the tree line in anticipation of what else it could bring. "There's a third room I want you to work on," Gillen said as he cut into syrup-drenched French toast. We sat at his kitchen table made of marble. Maple wood cabinets surrounded us and had stainless steel handles. I had never been in such a high-end dining area. I kept expecting his wife or kids to come down and commiserate if he had any. I had started to form the conclusion that he was without family, but I did not want to pry. "Sure," I said. "My basement needs to be a little livelier. Make it modern, newer, like a bachelor pad," I asked. He stared at me as his forehead crinkled. He savored the last bite of breakfast before he put his silverware down and finished a glass of milk. As he picked up a napkin and wiped his mouth, he stared at me and placed it in the puddle of liquid sugar on his plate. "No," he said with a shake of his head. "I need it to be pleasing. Imagine if you were remodeling a room you had to stay in no matter what, a place you could not escape from unless you were willing to die. I will show it to you soon enough." I paused and nodded. He was the boss, and though his request was vague to me at the moment, I agreed. Yet I had to state what was bothering me. I wiped my forehead with the napkin. "Before I went further, who owned this land before you?" I asked. "Why are you concerned about that? I spent some small amount of time in Dalat, Vietnam. Don't know how familiar you are with the geography over there, but it's the capital of the Lam Don province. It's a scenic place, and the locals call it the City of Eternal Spring. There's a villa there called Pren Pass. One night I went there on a lark, disobeying a lot of direct orders to try and get away from my station. I didn't get caught. While I was there, I saw a woman fall through the window. I later found out that it was a haunted domicile. A woman escaped and fell to her death to get away from a real horrible man. In other words, Mr. Gillen, ghosts exist, having seen one myself. I also think the outskirts of this place has them. I saw two men playing some kind of game, and a couple women dressed like they were getting ready for the end of the world. Of all the responses I may have expected, laughter was not one of them, which is the exact thing he unleashed on me. Once his chuckle stopped, he stood and pointed to the other end of the area. He motioned near the living quarters, where sofas and coffee tables sat. "I want to tell you what I expect out of the basement upon completion," he said. I was a bit irritated that he ignored my tale, as though he had not listened to me at all. I still followed him. Even after all these years, I still respected rank structures, often to my own detriment. He opened a door and led me down a flight of stairs. It did not take long for me to realize it was an underground fallout shelter. The place had metal barriers. Stacked around the chamber were crates of non-perishable goods. In the center was a metal slab with beakers, vials, and microscopes. "There's something I have to confess to you," he said, "something I have not told anyone else, or even spoken about. You know your eyes are not lying to you. You're a reasonable man, no doubt." He took a seat and offered me one near the scientific setup. I obliged and tried to get comfortable, impossible as it was. "You might think this place is to guard against imminent danger from the Russians," he said. "That is somewhat close to the reality, but it's not the entirety of it. In truth, this place was here before the tensions between the nations even started. This place used to belong to the government before they relinquished it and put it on sale. They did so because something tainted it. Of course, they wanted to sell it to someone who wouldn't find this room in particular to be odd. When the government owned it, this was not a residential property open to the public. It was a very private and guarded testing site." "For what?" I asked. And what left it tainted, as you said? It was a laboratory for recombinant DNA testing to aid humanity should the worst case scenario of the bombs dropping happening. He took a seat and scratched his brow. Mr. Gillen, I know I may look stupid, but they wanted to create a species of man that could withstand blasts of nuclear power, he said. This is where they housed and collected data on those subjects. The motive behind it was to create an indoctrinated soldier, someone who could crawl across a radioactive continent to get to the enemy, take them out as they cowered in their bunkers. You may be wondering who the victims were in the experiments. Many were volunteers. Some were the byproduct of artificial embryo twinning. Some people in the field of science fiction refer to it as cloning. I find the term pedestrian and not accordance with true scientific terminology. Other guinea pigs had labels. Enemies of the state, for example, ones cherry-picked by the top brass in the Department of Defense. They could only kidnap, detain, and ship those that would go unnoticed when they went missing. So, drug addicts, the homeless, ex-felons. He took in a long breath before he gave the next description of an undesirable. Bank robbers. Dylan lit a cigarette and seemed to revel in watching my face. Okay, I said. So some people got brought here against their will. Yes, and some tricked into coming here. Others were not aware of their true purpose until it was too late for them. This lab specialized in long-term nuclear consequences on those with modified genetics and almost, dare I say, superhuman ways. The 2 women you saw are students who thought they were here to study chemistry. The 2 men were test subjects who used to determine who would get hit with radiation first. They would come up with that outcome by playing a game of chess. The loser had to walk into the sphere and take the Roentgens first. See, we were not picky in the early stages of who we tested. As time has gone on, we decided we needed people who were athletic and had training. I took out my box cutter and sliced his ear. Blood spurted out as he backed away, up and out of his seat, and fell. I ran out of the house. His driver tried to stop me at the front gate, and I punched him in the abdomen hard enough to where he doubled over. I scaled the barbed wire and ran for miles. It occurred to me that no one was going to believe my story. I collected my vehicle, which was still at the bar, and drove out of town. For the next several weeks, I worried if he would go to the authorities and give them my description. That did not happen. I guessed he did not want investigators near his premises searching for evidence. They would find incriminating writings, notebooks, and research materials. As the decades have gone by, I ponder that dreadful day, the alleged biologist, and his speech made me think he was an insane person. I ruminate on whether the people I saw were either figments of my imagination or something else. Terror grips me often. What if he told me the truth in our final conversation? You may have seen my name and face on the news. You may have heard that I'm missing, that my car was found abandoned on 5th Street, and that nobody has heard from me since. Police may have tried to trace my phone, but I doubt they will find any useful data. I don't know where I am, but I'm sure it is far beyond the scope of the authorities. I've been an urban explorer for years. For those not in the know, that's a fancy term for someone who breaks into old buildings for fun. There's just something about standing in a place that is abandoned, somewhere that hasn't been lived in for years, which fascinates me. There is a subtle uncanniness to it, something just ever so slightly off about being in a place that was meant to be used, but has been abandoned for a long time. I've explored old sanitariums, hospitals, schools, malls, and a handful of stores. I tend to avoid houses and apartment buildings, since those are usually more likely to have nosy neighbors call the cops. But when I saw the house on 5th Street, I couldn't help myself. The building itself looked old, with a gothic style like something out of an old ghost story. It seemed to fit in the middle ground between mansion and house, barely fitting in the space between the buildings next to it. It looked completely abandoned, with all of the windows boarded up, the lawn completely dead, and a sign with the word foreclosed stuck to one of the walls. It wasn't so much how the house itself looked, and more the fact that it wasn't there the day before. It sounds impossible, right? But it's true. I'd never noticed it before, so I looked up the property on the web, using Street View on an online maps site to take a look. It wasn't there. It's not like there was an empty lot or a different house. It's like it just sprung up overnight, pushing other houses out of the way. I had no idea how it even fit there. It's not like the street was suddenly longer or a house was missing. It was as if it had always been there, regardless of how impossible that was. At first I was fairly hesitant to enter the building. It was in a residential area, for one thing, and also it was fundamentally an impossibility. Was there some kind of cover-up for this building? I was half expecting there to be some top-secret government lab hidden underneath it. All records of its existence erased from satellite data, city records, and online databases. But I had to know, it would eat away at me for the rest of my life if I didn't at least look into it. On the next day I had off from work. I packed up my gear and got ready to enter the house. I decided to go at night, figuring that the less people were awake the better. I packed a flashlight, spare batteries, a water bottle, some pepper spray, my cell phone, and a first aid kit. I had no idea what to expect, so I decided to go as prepared as I could. When I arrived at the house on 5th Street, I had this really weird feeling, like I was standing on the surface of another planet. It felt wrong, as if I was a magnet being pushed against another magnet of the same polarity. I tried to shrug it off, to tell myself I was just nervous, and I walked up to the front door. I expected it to be locked, that I'd need to go around the back and see if there was a back way in. But to my surprise, the door pushed open. I didn't even need to twist the doorknob. In fact, when I did, it didn't budge. A closer glance made me realize that the knob itself had no mechanism. It didn't control a bolt. The door was simply closed via friction. The doorknob wasn't even made of metal. It was just a piece of wood painted metallic gold. I turned on my flashlight, stepping into the entryway of the house. I expected it to smell of mold, decay, but to my surprise the scent it most closely reminded me of was that odor new cars have. I looked around, observing my surroundings. The inside was in surprisingly good condition, given the dilapidated appearance of the exterior. The walls were carved wood panels, and the floor seemed to be polished hardwood. A staircase led up the 2nd floor, and there were a few doors leading to other parts of the house. I figured it would be safer to try the 1st floor to begin with, and so I picked one of the doors at random and opened it. Like the front door, there was no mechanism to the door knob. I couldn't twist it, just pulling it caused it to open. I wondered how nobody had broken into this place already, given that there was evidently no way to lock the front door. The room I entered seemed to be a dining area, with a number of wooden chairs arranged around a long table. At the far wall was a painting of a familiar-looking house. Inspecting it closer, I realized it was a less decayed version of the building I was currently standing in. It struck me as rather odd to have a painting of your own house hanging on the wall, but rich people can be a bit eccentric, so I didn't pay it too much mind. I was confused as to how well furnished everything was. Usually people take most of the furniture when they leave, and when they don't, what is left behind is quickly stolen or destroyed. I looked closer at one of the chairs, admiring the craftsmanship. I tried to pull it closer to me to get a better look, but it wouldn't budge. Confused, I knelt down next to it, trying to see what was keeping it held in place. To my surprise, I realized that the whole thing seemed like it was a part of the floor itself, as if it was all carved from one solid piece of wood. I tried to find a seam or signs of glue, nails, anything to indicate that the floor and the chair had originally been separate, but I couldn't. It looked almost as if it had grown out of the house itself. That feeling of magnetic repulsion came back again. This house felt wrong. If I was smarter, I would have turned and left right then and there, but I needed to know what the hell was going on. I proceeded further into the house, opening up another door that led out of the dining room. This one took me into what seemed to be a library. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with volumes of all shapes and sizes, or so I thought. Moving closer to one of the shelves, I noticed that none of the books actually had titles on their spines. They were all just blank. I tried to pick one out, but I found it wouldn't budge. The books were part of the shelf itself, just like with the chairs in the dining room. Who the hell built this place? I muttered to myself, profoundly puzzled. Then I heard the sound of wood creaking behind me. I wheeled around, startled, seeing a door slowly being pushed open. I shone my flashlight, trying to get a look at who was opening it. "Who's there?" I shouted, trying to control the fear in my voice. There was no response, and the door just continued to slowly creak as it opened ever wider. I reached for the pepper spray and got it ready, holding my flashlight in the other hand. Then I saw what was coming through the doorway and screamed. It was human in general shape, but it seemed half-formed, artificial, like a mannequin carved from a lump of clay. It looked like it was wearing a suit of some kind, but even at a glance I could tell that its clothes were actually just part of its body. The thing had no face, just loose indentations and protrusions where features would appear on a human being. A small lump for a nose, a slight crease where a mouth should be, slight hollows for eye sockets. Bizarrely, its head inflated and deflated slightly as it moved, like the thing's lungs were kept in there. Its hands were just lumps with stubby thumbs sticking out, with no differentiated fingers and no nails. Shaking in fear, I aimed the pepper spray and pressed down on the nozzle, releasing a cloud of the fluid directly at its face. The thing didn't even flinch, it just started to stumble towards me clumsily, like a deer first learning to walk. I dropped the pepper spray and began to run, pushing through the door and sprinting back through the dining room. I rushed for the entryway, desperately trying to get out of the house, but when I got there, the door was gone. In its place was just a wall with a painting of a house on it. I tried to rip the painting off the wall, grasping at the frame, only to find that, like the books and the chairs, the painting was a part of the house itself, seemingly grown from the wall. I could hear more shuffling footsteps coming from behind me. Thinking quickly, I guessed that the thing might have some difficulty going upstairs, so I swiftly ran up to the second floor, taking 2 steps at a time. My heart was pounding, my face covered in sweat. I had no idea what was happening. The only thing I knew was that I had to survive. I had to escape this house. Once I reached the top of the stairs, I peered down, trying to catch a glimpse of my pursuer. I saw the half-formed monstrosity continue to shamble its way after me, pausing for a moment in front of the stairs. A glimmer of hope flared inside my chest. Perhaps this thing couldn't ascend the stairs. It shuffled away, opening up a door and stepping through, closing it behind it. I sighed with relief, allowing myself to relax just a little. Then I heard a door creaking open from right behind me. I turned around just in time to see the faceless thing begin to shuffle out of the doorway before I shrieked in fear and took off running down a random hallway. As I fled, my brain began to process details that I hadn't initially noticed, things that I took for granted. Every so often there would be a painting on the wall, but it would always be the same image of the house viewed from outside. Every door was exactly the same, down to the scratches and imperfections of the wood. Occasionally there would be what looked like a rug placed on the floor, but it had the same hardness of the rest of the wooden floor. This house was wrong. I rounded a corner and stopped, trying to open one of the identical doors, hoping maybe I might be able to find a hiding spot inside, but it wouldn't budge. Looking closer, I realized that it wasn't a door at all, just a part of the wall that was carved to look like a door. I cursed and kept running as I heard the shuffling footsteps from behind me. It couldn't have caught up that quickly, could it? My lungs were starting to burn now. It felt like I had been fleeing for hours. The upper floor seemed to be nothing but endless corridors, full of twists and turns and identical doors. As I continued my flight, the architecture seemed to break down. Doors would be installed sideways on the wall, paintings lying on the floor. At one point I tried one of the doors again, only to find an exact duplicate of the library from before, with my faceless pursuer within, shuffling towards me. I was half tempted to just let it catch me, but the primal need to survive overpowered my urge to be free of the chase, and I shut the door instead, jogging as fast as I could. Once I tried to jump through a window. Bright sunlight seemed to emanate from it, despite the fact that it should have been the dead of night. But as I slammed my shoulder into it, I fell backwards in pain. Touching the window with my hand, I found it was just more wood, simply emitting light like the bioluminescence of a deep-sea fish. I almost wept with relief when I saw a staircase. It was a big spiral one, with steps leading both up and down. My heart dropped when I got closer. Peering down, the staircase seemed to descend down forever, a bottomless pit. There were no other landings, as far as I could see. Looking up, the staircase further ascended upwards into infinity. The creak of a door opening followed by shuffling footsteps emerged from behind me, and I quickly jerked around to see how far away my pursuer was. It was only about 15 feet behind me. I eyed the endless pit nervously as I backed up slowly, my back pressing against the wooden railing. The bizarre mockery of a human form stumbled towards me. its wrinkled skin barely approximating the appearance of a suit. Its head continued to pulsate slightly. As it shuffled, I wondered how the thing could even know where I was, given it had no visible sensory organs to speak of. With each pulse of its head it inched closer towards me, its blobby hands reaching up as if to strangle me. As it was only inches away from my throat, I quickly ducked down and moved around behind it, kicking the thing in the back as hard as I could. The thing was surprisingly heavy, but the only helped it to crash through the wooden railing and tumble down the endless stairwell. I peered over the edge and saw it flailing slightly as it fell, eventually so far away I couldn't even see it anymore. I hoped that would keep it off my tail for at least a few hours. I felt unimaginably tired and started trying some of the doors on the walls, eventually finding a real one that led into a bedroom. There was a 4-poster bed, some cabinets, and, of course, a painting of a house. I laid down on the bed, only to find that, like everything else in this house, it was simply a wooden replica, the seemingly comfortable blankets and pillows rigid and cold. My thoughts raced as I tried to understand what was going on here. I began to fully process that this house was bigger on the inside than on the outside. The endless staircase was proof enough of that, as were the seemingly infinite hallways I had been running down. The layout itself could change, given that the door I initially entered from had vanished. I began to wonder if there truly would be any way to get out of this place. I didn't mean to fall asleep. I still didn't feel safe here even without my pursuer, but fatigue set in against my will. I awoke to an uncomfortable sensation of pinching on my legs. I sat up, shining my flashlight, and almost shrieked with fear. The wooden imitation of the bed was starting to grow around me, expanding to cover me like an amoeba consuming prey. The wood was starting to tightly press against my legs, causing the discomfort, which awoke me. I wrenched myself free, bruising my legs slightly with the effort, and left the room in a hurry. I continued to wander the empty hallways, periodically illuminated by the knot windows of luminescent wood. I started to look through my belongings, trying to think of anything that could help me. Reaching into the first aid kit, I found a pair of metal scissors, which gave me an idea. Approaching one of the knot windows, I gripped the scissors in my hand and started pounding it into the wood, using the point of the scissors like a chisel. I kept digging into it for several minutes, eventually getting a fairly sizable hole cut into the glowing panel. Finally, I felt the hard rigidity of the wood give way, and my scissors pierced something soft. Looking closer, I felt like I was going to vomit. Sticky red liquid began to leak from the hole I had dug, and I could see pinkish flesh about 3 inches past what I had thought was wood. It wasn't wood at all. It was chitin. I was trapped inside of something alive, knowing that I couldn't rest, or I'd be absorbed into whatever this hellish mockery of a home was. I just started to aimlessly wander, trying to keep moving. The half-formed humanoid creature didn't come back, so I figured it must still be falling down that stairwell, unable to reach a door to step through and appear behind me. The deeper I went into the house, the stranger it became. The horizontal doorways and paintings on the floor were just the beginning of this place's deterioration into incomprehensibility. Sometimes there would be a 6-way intersection, with corridors going north, south, east, west, as well as up and down. The corridors just continued on as normal. Doors on the walls, glowing knot windows, the occasional rug, but at a 90-degree angle. I tossed one of the bandages from my first aid kit down once, wondering if maybe gravity would be relative to the corridor's own floor, but it just fluttered down. Sometimes opening up a door would lead to bizarre conglomerations of different rooms. Dining rooms with a bookshelf laying flat on the floor instead of a table, a sitting room whose walls seemed to be made of bed sheets, a bathroom with a fireplace instead of a sink. I passed a couple more endless stairwells, and at one point something fell down past me. I didn't get a good look at it. The thing must have been falling at terminal velocity, but I'd bet money it was the faceless thing that had been following me, still falling forever. There was no way of knowing how long I had been wandering when I found the backpack. My stomach cramped, my mouth felt dry, and I had long since drunk the last of my water. Every muscle in my body ached, and I felt like I hadn't slept in days. More than once I had considered just lying down and accepting my fate, letting go peacefully rather than continuing on. As I rounded yet another corner, I saw something sticking halfway out of the floor in the slow process of being absorbed into the architecture. It was red, made of some sort of fabric, and quickly I ran up to it and ripped it out of the floor, opening the zipper and rummaging inside it, searching desperately for supplies. Contained within was a sketchbook and some pencils, a couple granola bars, and a can of soda. I started to tear up with relief. It was only then that I noticed the hand sticking out of the floor, the faint outline of a human form visible through the knotwood. My relief turned to sickness as I retched, realizing that lying in front of me, slowly being absorbed into the floor, was another human being. There was no way I could have cut them out, no way I could get them free. And even if there was, their whole face was covered up by now. Was there even any way they could still be breathing? After running away with the backpack and its contents, I opened up the sketchbook and looked inside, eating one of the granola bars and greedily drinking the soda. The date on the first page said 2022. I first entered the house in 2015. I have no idea how this is possible. I obviously haven't survived in here for 7 years. I haven't slept since I passed out in the bedroom, and I only recently was able to eat anything. But I have a theory, a vague idea as to what is going on. I've already established that this house is a living organism. The blood and flesh behind the fake wood proves that much. Clearly this thing operates outside of the normal understanding of space as well, what with it being larger on the inside and possessing seemingly infinite stairwells leading up and down forever. I think that this thing is an extra-dimensional predator. That's how it was able to suddenly appear in the street when there was no space for it. It just bent space around itself so it could fit, so it could lure in victims. It's not a perfect imitation. It can only seem to mimic wood. That's why everything in the house has the same texture, just different coloration. I think it lures people inside, sends one of those faceless things after them, and then absorbs the body to sustain itself. I'm not sure how an organism this large can survive just on the occasional urban explorer, but it's the only thing that makes sense. My guess is that it can travel through time, as well as space. I bet that the house isn't there anymore in 2015. It must have vanished shortly after I walked inside. It must have appeared again in 2022, and got the poor bastard whose sketchbook I've been using to write this down. I've read somewhere that every year about 2,700 missing persons cases in the United States go unsolved. How many of them were taken by this thing? Does it just have to appear in the suburbs, or is anywhere fair game? Could it appear in the middle of the woods, waiting for lost hikers to wander and looking for shelter? What's to stop it from just appearing as a door inside someone's house? It had even limited to this planet, this universe. I'm going to tear out these pages of the sketchbook I've been writing in, crumple them up in a ball, and toss them down one of the infinite stairwells. When I next find one, it's a slim chance, but maybe, just maybe, this will reach someone on the outside world. This thing has to have a system, right? If you see a house matching the description I've given, don't go in it. It's not worth it. My name is Felicia Martinez, and the name I saw written in the sketchbook was Robert Doyle. Remember us. We finally had 2 weeks off at the same time, Richard and I. Let's go on a road trip, somewhere random, somewhere we haven't been yet. What do you think? I wanted to leave enough mystery for this idea to be intriguing and win out over the desire to spend our hard-earned vacation time at home doing spring cleaning. Well, Richard pursed his lips as he weighed his options. I was the spontaneous one, while he tended to opt for more responsible ways to spend time. I put on my best combination of alluring smile and pleading eyes. Come on, please. I promise when we come back we can spend the entire rest of the time cleaning every nook and cranny of this place. How about up to Maine? Richard cracked a grin. 3 days later, we had an Airbnb booked and the SUV packed. It had been so long since we had been able to take a trip like this together. I was determined to make the most of it. I spent the better part of the workday after the decision to go researching small seaside towns and activities. The drive was estimated to be just over 7 hours according to Google Maps. While we had a bunch of podcasts and games ready to go, I knew I was going to succumb to my desire to nap on long car rides. There is something about the sound of tires on the highway and the purr of the engine that soothes me. Just as expected, I fell asleep about 4 hours in. A blaring horn startled me awake, with a semi-trailer flying past my window to confirm the source. I rubbed my eyes. How long was I out? I looked for the sun to see if I could estimate the time. I learned in Girl Scouts how to tell the time from the stars, but I can't seem to find the sun. Must be about to set, huh? My stomach growled, so I turned my attention to my purse at my feet. Are you hungry? I asked as I dug around in search of a snack. All I have in here are Mentos, and I have no idea how old these are. I looked back out my window to check for one of those huge blue signs listing restaurants or rest stops. Hun, what do you? I hadn't looked at Richard yet. When I glanced at him just then, I noticed he was staring at me, right at me. Just his head was turned 90 degrees, a smile frozen on his face. What? I asked, a smirk creeping to the side of my mouth. We used to do this all the time, playing driver's chicken. It didn't take long for my smile to wear away, though. This wasn't chicken. Normally whoever was driving would always glance back at the road, or give up after about 5 seconds. Richard wasn't giving up. Richard, look at the road. I whipped my head from his eerie smiling face to the road in front of us. You're going 80 miles an hour. This isn't funny. You're going to get us killed. I screamed as a red Honda changed lanes right in front of us. Somehow, Richard smoothly changed lanes right around the car and back. I was looking right into his eyes that whole time. He hadn't turned away from me, not to look in the rear view mirror, not out the front windshield, not even a little to the side. His eyes were locked onto mine, his smile never faltering. The weirdest thing was how his eyes looked. They were always my favorite feature of Richard's. Deep mossy green, with perfectly long eyelashes. But now, they seemed darker somehow. It took me a few moments to realize that it was his pupils. They were slowly dilating, swallowing more and more of his iris into darkness. That was an hour ago. No matter what I did, he would not look back at the road. I tried to turn his head, scream, plead, cry. I even slapped him at one point, hoping to break him out of whatever trance this was. The only time he moved was when I tried to grab the wheel from him. I won't try that again. Even though Richard won't look at the road, he never hits anything or anyone. We're still driving north, and I don't know if he's going to stop when we reach our vacation town. I don't know if he is even my Richard anymore. I don't know if I can call the cops. Will they believe me? I'll sound insane telling them my husband, whose eyes are completely black now, won't stop driving the car and is just staring at me. Maybe I should try that anyway. I don't know. I do know one thing, though. We have to run out of gas eventually. I thought by now we'd run out of gas, but the fuel gauge has been slowly spinning in smooth circles, seemingly emptying, before counterclockwise refilling itself on an endless loop. I haven't slept again since waking up into this living nightmare. I haven't felt tired. I haven't been hungry. I haven't even felt the need to use the restroom, which isn't typical for me on long stretches in the car. All I feel is Richard's smile, his lips curled up small above his teeth, bigger than I've ever known. We must have been driving for hours at this point. My body and my mind know it's been a long time. My legs are feeling restless. The clock on the center console has been cycling through numbers at random, and it's been impossible to tell the time since waking up. It's obviously daylight out, but every time I look out the window, I can't seem to find the sun. An hour ago, I tried to call the police. At least it felt like an hour ago. The clock on my phone has disappeared. I opened the keypad and dialed 911. Phone pressed to my right ear, eyes glancing sideways at Richard. I held my breath waiting for the call to go through. After a few seconds of silence, I pulled the phone away to check the screen. The display said calling, with the ellipses writing itself over and over. The call wasn't connecting. I hung up the phone, then tried again. Still nothing. I looked at the top corner of my phone screen to check the service. Instead of those little bars increasing in size, or 4G or my phone carrier name, it said no service with a little symbol next to it. I squinted, trying to make out the shape. I threw my phone to the floor with a gasp as I realized that the symbol was a smiley face emoji. About 30 minutes ago, I tried to roll down the window so I could get a better look outside. I kept the finger on the button as the glass descended, fresh air whipping fast across my face. I looked back at Richard to see if he would react. I was only met with that increasingly familiar smile, that awful grin. His face used to melt away all my fear and anger. Now, the wide eyes and wide smile fill me with terror, fill me with rage. I place my free hand on the window as it lowered to feel the air. Then the window froze, and I noticed that Richard's left hand wasn't on the wheel anymore. He had locked the automatic windows. Why are you doing this? I don't understand. I had asked this question 100 times by now, but each time my words were filled with more venom. Richard, please answer me. Are you just going to keep this up forever? What do you want from me? What can I? I felt a searing pain as my right hand was being crushed in the rolled up window. I hadn't felt it going up as Richard pressed the button on his door. I desperately tried to yank my fingers free. Richard, please stop. Open the window. I was staring at him, tears streaming from my eyes, mouth agape in horror as the man I loved smiled back at me. That smile was the last thing I saw before I passed out from the pain throbbing down my arm. When I regained consciousness, my hand was free, but on the window were the words no in smeared red letters. There have been other cars on the road. I've been frantically trying to get their attention. I wave, I scream, I bang on any surface I can reach. Hands still raw, I grab the paper map of the East Coast that Richard liked to keep in the back seat. I had highlighted our route in pink with little stars marked stops I thought we'd enjoy. I rummaged in my purse for a pen. I did the words help in big, blue letters across the map. I used my shirt sleeve to wipe away the bloody words to my right and plastered the map against the glass. I pleaded for someone to look in our direction. I couldn't get anyone's attention. I started counting the passing seconds in my head. 5 minutes ago, I decided I was going to jump. The exits were locked, but if I was quick, I could hit the unlock button and throw the door open in a matter of seconds. I knew we were going too fast, and my chances of survival were slim, but that incessant smile is burned into my eyes, burned into my brain. I didn't see any other way to escape. It had to be my best chance to get out. I stared straight ahead, trying to watch for any movement out of my peripherals, hands resting in my lap. I shifted my weight like I was just readjusting my posture, my left hand coming to rest over the seatbelt release. I let out a hefty fake cough as I pushed down, releasing the buckle. The click was loud, but Richard didn't move an inch. I felt hopeful, looking at him with caution while I guided the seatbelt into its retracted position against the car door. He smiled. He stared. I could see my face reflected in those huge pupils, smiling, staring. I could see my wide eyes reflected in his, my chest heaving with deep, anxious breaths. As I held his gaze, my right hand found the door handle. I grasped the cold metal, a rush of adrenaline spiking my heart. I counted down in my head. 3, a bead of sweat dripped from my forehead into my eye. It stung, and I tried to blink it away. 2, I gripped the door handle tighter, tensing my leg muscles for the imminent leap. 1, did Richard's mouth twitch? I hesitated. Was Richard still in there, behind the dilated pupils and faux smile? I pulled the handle and threw my weight to the right, hearing the whistle of wind fly by my ears. My hair whipped about in every direction. Time was infinite. I turned back to face Richard one last time. Our eyes locked, his new expression now unwavering. He didn't try to stop me. I leaned backward. I closed my eyes, about to hit the asphalt with nothing but a thin fabrics protecting my body. No matter the mangled outcome, I was going to escape. I gulped in air to fill my lungs like breaching the surface of water after being submerged for too long. I was in our car, same Richard, same smile, same road, same broken console, same inescapable madness. I'm trying anything I can think of now. I've tried sending texts, but they all fail. I've called every number saved in my phone. Wait, every number except for one. I open the favorites section on my phone and press my thumb onto the first number. It rings. Amazed, I look up to the cell phone holder on the car vent where Richard's phone is sitting. It doesn't light up, it doesn't vibrate, nothing. I pull my phone away to confirm that it is calling the right number. My phone is connecting to Richard's. I slowly put the phone back up to my ear. The ringing stops. Hello, Eve. Richard. I held my breath, waiting for words from the other end of the call. Yes, I looked at the ever-smiling thing to my left, the landscape whizzing by behind his head. The wide, unmoving eyes of my former partner remained locked in my direction. I slouched low in my seat, shrinking away from him and from this whole fucked up situation. Where are you? I'm right here, Eve. But you're here, sitting next to me in the car. It's you, or maybe it used to be you. If you're on the other end of this call, what is this thing I've been driving next to for hours? My brain couldn't comprehend what was happening. I needed an explanation. Tell me what's happening, Eve. Richard's voice sounded far away, but it calmed me a bit to finally hear it again. Some nights at home, just before drifting off to sleep, Richard would start a conversation about a major life topic, like buying a new house or starting a family, and we'd be up for hours just listening to each other talk. I missed hearing his voice. While trapped in this car, the smiling thing taunted me with its deafening silence. I closed my eyes and tried my best to tell Richard what was going on. You're sitting next to me in the car. It's you, but maybe it's not you. How can it be you? You're on the phone, and the body in the driver's seat isn't moving, isn't talking. You've been staring at me with an unearthly smile stretched across your face for the past. I don't know how long I've been in this car. I can't escape. I can't get you to look away, or talk, or do anything. I tried jumping out of the car, but ended up right back inside. I remember the moments before hitting the asphalt, hoping I'd live but ready to die just to escape. I know that sounds insane, but it's the truth. I'm trapped. My voice started to shake as the thought of being forever stuck with this silent, smiling demon crept in. Help me, please. How is all of this making you feel? I sat up in my seat, caught off guard by the ridiculous question. What the hell, Richard? How do you think I'm feeling? Maybe this is some sick joke, but it's all too supernatural. I don't know. Maybe I'm already dead. Maybe I'm being punished for something. This isn't real. It can't be. That means this phone call isn't even real. I considered hanging up the phone. But even if I was being punished, hearing Richard's voice was some vague consolation. You say you think you're being punished. I pulled my hair in frustration. My mind was no longer my own. This entire conversation with fake Richard must have been fabricated by my lost mind. It seemed futile to continue the conversation. But at this stage, what else was I going to do? Well, I've read enough horror stories to recognize this scenario. I'm trapped here in a seemingly unending hell world. Think, Eve, have you done anything for which you should be punished? Why are you asking me these questions? Why? Help me get out of here, I pleaded. You're my Richard, or maybe you're not, so whoever you are, please. I haven't been able to contact anyone since waking up to this smiling monster. We're weaving past cars. We haven't had to stop for gas. It's not making sense. And I just want out. Please, please. I am trying to help you, Eve. Take a breath and think about the question. I stared out through the windshield at the painted highway lines zipping toward us and disappearing out of sight under the car, considering the nameless voice on the other end of the call and its calm inquiries. Can I think of any reason why I should be punished? Yes. I closed my eyes. Slow inhale through my nose. Slow exhale through pursed lips. Put on the spot. Imagine trying to recount all the mistakes you have made in your life. Does the mind retain every misstep? We learn and we adapt based on our mistakes. Perhaps guilt also plays a factor. That at some point, we let go. We forget. I started with my most recent memories. Something must have occurred not long ago to send me here. Is there someone I've wronged? Broken laws? No. Just a normal life. I try my best to not offend. Some may even call me meek. A pushover. I could use less plastic bags. I could tip a bit more at restaurants. Nothing deserving of this entrapment, this kidnapping, and the broken man with the broken smile beside me. Are you still with me? Eve, yes, and I can't think of anything. I haven't done anything to deserve this. I'm certain. Alright, that's good. If you're sure, can you tell me about what you see around you, outside the car? Once again, I scoured the landscape as we sped down the never-ending highway. Beyond the dark borders where the asphalt met the shoulder, there was nothing but a blur of various shades of green. It's a forest. I haven't seen any animals, or signs, or exits off the highway. There are other cars, but I can't seem to get anyone's attention. I sighed. It's hopeless, Richard. I still don't know if you're real, because I've probably gone insane. But I don't think I'll ever be able to get out of this. This is my life now, a hard truth to accept. Maybe I would keep trying to escape after this phone call came to its natural conclusion. Perhaps I would starve to death, or die of dehydration, but oddly I hadn't even felt any hunger pangs after hours and hours inside the car. No, Eve, this is not your life. We've both worked too hard for this. Eve, listen to me. Look again. What do you see around you? I don't know what you want from me. It's just you, me, the highway, the forest, This car, and people in other vehicles barreling down the road around us. People who won't pay me any goddamn attention. I heard Richard sigh. It was the kind of sigh he used when he was trying to contain his frustration with me. Okay, fine. Forget the outside. Close your eyes. And tell me about your favorite memory. What? Your favorite memory? The scene you hold nearest to your heart. The moment that is never far from your thoughts. I couldn't see how this would help, but I'd already come this far, answering these questions. I closed my eyes yet again. It was hard to fight past the burning image of the frozen being beside me with its gleaming white teeth and chapped lips. My stomach lurched and my face distorted as I hunted for something happy. I could only remember our car. I don't. No, you can do it. I know what's in there, Eve. A flash, bright sun, laughter, potato salad in my hair. What are you thinking about? I told the voice on the phone about the picnic forming in my mind. The face of Richard, the real Richard, swam into view. I could count the freckles across his nose. My hand was on his knee. He raised his camera and snapped a picture of me mid-laugh. We were in a park by the water, near the bay. There was the lighthouse, where my brother got married 3 years ago. There were the couples holding hands, walking dogs. Children were playing tag in the distance, running barefoot through the warm grass. Good, keep going. It felt good to remember. The sun was warm on my face. The sky was free of clouds. A frisbee sat on our blanket, but we never got up to play, and that was fine. We brought too much food with us. We talked about getting a dog. We talked about the wedding we'd have, the house we'd have, the kids we'd have. My mouth turned up into a relaxed smile. When was the last time I smiled? You found the place, Eve. What place? I asked dreamily. I wasn't ready to snap back into the horror of the present. Your safe place. That's exactly where I need you to be. That's right. Now you're ready. I want you to kill him. Something shifted in my brain. In a way, it was as if my brain and my body were in two different places, no longer occupying the same space. What? I whispered. Kill Richard. Quickly, before you both get up to leave. Do you see anything around you that you can use as a weapon? I looked around. The picnic blanket we were sitting on, the blades of grass lazily swaying in the warm breeze. Something silver glinted in the sun. It was the cheese knife we brought, plunged deep into a block of cheddar like the Arthurian sword in the stone. Without much consideration, I wrapped my fingers around the handle. Kill him, the voice of Richard sang sweetly in my ear. Yes, it made sense. I had to kill him to escape. My happy moment would be tarnished forever, but it had to be destroyed for me to finally be free. I looked up from the knife to Richard's face. His face was no longer filled with love and affection. He was smiling, but oh God, it was that sinister never-ending grin again. The horror had invaded the safe space I had built. My eyes snapped open. We were back in the car, my lost driver gripping the steering wheel with his neck twisted toward me at a perfect 90-degree angle. I was twisted at the waist, my right hand in my lap. I was holding the knife. Involuntarily, I raised my arm. I furrowed my brow. This didn't make sense. I couldn't do it. He's not who you think. Kill it, the voice said. The words coursed swiftly through my veins. I gripped the knife harder. My knuckles turned white. I gritted my teeth, concentrating my gaze. I knew exactly where to aim my strike. I'm sorry. I drove the sharp, cold metal straight through the pearly white wall of teeth. I pulled back. I plunged forward into the empty, green eyes. First the left, then the right. I pulled back. I dug the steel into his chest, targeting his heart, the heart that I once possessed. The menacing smile never faltered as crimson began to overtake its entire face. I placed my hand on its chest, sobbing. Eve, are you still there? The voice was clearer now. I looked at my glistening hands, stained red. I looked up. The room came into focus. I was strapped into a black, full leather chair that squeaked uncomfortably when I shifted my weight. A man stood a few feet away. I looked at the familiar name tag on his white jacket. Dr. Richard Amnes. He was smiling, looking straight into my eyes. He leaned forward slightly, waiting for a response. Yes, Richard, I'm here. He expelled a small laugh and pulled a recorder from his pocket. Richard spoke calmly into the microphone. Eve has successfully emerged from trial 1.